They're coming to get you, Barbara.
When there's no more room in hell.
And what's up, everybody? Happy Sunday night to you all. Hopefully everything is going well for you. Hopefully everybody is depending on where you are, I guess. Handling the cold, the bitter cold. It's been fucking freezing here. The past few days. Yesterday wasn't too bad. Today it got down into the teens, and then that was pretty rough. So not too bad. I mean, it's the cold. Like I'm a layers guy anyway. Michelle gave me shit because in June at Living Dead weekend, I'm always got like 2 or 3 shirts on and pants and boots, and I don't know, man. I'm just naturally a layers guy. I don't know. That's just my style. Hang on a second. I forgot something. Important when you're doing a live stream, you have to have. It's got to be aesthetically pleasing to the audience. It's YouTube 101. So, and if you guys have ever noticed on most live streams, such as this one, everybody's got, colored lights and shit. Everybody's shit always looks better than mine. Matt, perfect example, man. Matt's room looks fucking awesome. He's got that shit like professionally lit, angles all right. Me, man, I just put up 2 lights and say, hey, blue is a good color. Let's go with that, which you can pick from multicolors, but I don't know. I go with blue. I don't know. I'm a blue guy. I'm blue. Anyway, how's it going, everybody? Awkward start, but whatever. Who cares? Hope everybody's doing well out there. Tonight, thinking about what the hell I was going to do, because I know next weekend I'm working on it. I've been working on it. It's kind of a big project for me every year that I like to do. Romero trivia night every year around Christmas time. My time to give back to you guys. Play a little game, have some fun, make the show all about you guys in the chat, and give away some prizes. So working on that. That'll be hopefully next weekend. Like I said, I'm any minute now. It feels like I'm gonna have a baby, another child to handle. So and honestly, I'm kind of like I don't know. I'm excited, but at the same time nervous, because it's like I'm such a regimented guy, like schedule wise. I'm very meticulous about like every day. I have to get up at this time. I have to have a cup of coffee. I have to have a shower by this time. Get to work by this time. Yada 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 yada. And like when you throw in when you throw in a newborn baby into the mix, like everything gets thrown off. So I don't know what the channel holds going forward in terms of schedule wise. But I'm going to try to keep it as, as it's been, weekends, 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. It's a good time for me. It's when everybody goes to bed and it's a little quiet in here, and I can kind of focus on me doing some me stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. But right now the plan is next weekend, Romero trivia night. 4 categories, 5 questions per category. We're going to spin the wheel. We're going to put you on the wheel. First 5 correct answers in the chat will get entered into the wheel. We'll spin the wheel after each category, and you'll win a prize. I'm thinking about what the prizes are. I don't, usually I just have shit around my room that I've collected, and I'm just like, I can give this to somebody. I can give this to somebody. But I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'll let you guys know. I have some ideas. If nothing else, I'll just let you guys pick a shirt or what, whatever you want off of the shop.alfaromero.store page, and I'll ship it to you along with some stickers, magnets, little trinkets here and there, something like that. But it's just a time to have fun, something relaxing and engaging with you guys. So yeah, plan is to do that next weekend. So tonight I was thinking like, oh, what do I want to do, and I'm just thinking like, I have a bunch of show ideas in mind, but it's like I always want more. I always feel like I don't have enough time to prepare. Because believe it or not, I do kind of prepare to do this shit every weekend. I overly prepare, and in my mind, it's just like, oh, what are you preparing for? Like just shoot from the hip, go with the flow. But I don't know if I feel like if I did that, it would kind of lose its fun doing this, kind of lose its luster. Like part of the whole fun of this is like the creative aspect and kind of, and I honestly challenging myself to learn more about this stuff because I love to learn about Romero. I love to learn about films, horror films, especially Romero stuff. And I always love learning new stuff, reading things, really digging into the research and kind of, you know, um, going deep on that. Didn't have a guest or anything planned for this weekend. So I was like, oh, what do I want to, would be something good to do? And I was like, a top 10 would be good, but what kind of top 10? I was like, soundtracks. That's been like a topic of debate on this channel for a while now with Matt's hot takes and, John Vulo's hot takes and my hot takes. So I was like, I'll tell you what, we're going to straighten all this shit out tonight. I'm going to give you the definitive top 10 Romero soundtracks list, according to me. And there's some interesting selections because this was a hard one. I really had to think about this one and kind of whittle it down and try to come up with some kind of criteria of like, okay, so I love this soundtrack, but is it better than this one? I love parts of this soundtrack, but the parts that I do like about it, I actually like really, really love. And like, where would I put this in a can? And I think I've gotten it down. There's a couple that I think I could switch back and forth if I really thought about it too hard. But I think if I'm just being honest, as I always am, Steven, I'm always honest. And I'm sure there's going to be some controversial takes and some controversial opinions tonight on some of these, but I whittled it down to my top 10 definitive Romero soundtracks list. We're going to get into that fairly quickly tonight. I have to get up extra early in the morning for work. So I'm going to try not, because the last time I did a fucking top 10 list on here, it was a 4.5 hour stream because God knows when you get me started talking about something that I love, I can fucking go on and on and on and on about it. So yeah, the last top 10 I did, which was just top 10 favorite non-Romero horror films, was just, it was a 4.5 hour stream because I would get on a movie and spend 25 30 minutes on it and I'd be like, god damn. And then by the end of it I was just dead. So I'm gonna try to get into it a little quicker tonight so we can spend a little time on all these and hear you guys' opinions and your takes in the chat as well. I see quite a few of you chiming in already. I'll get to you guys in just 1 second here, but I did want to mention something, a little bit of bad news, some sad news, actually, more so than bad news. But I did want to give a quick mention. And I'm having coffee tonight in my my Lightning over Braddock Tony Booba coffee mug tonight in his honor. But earlier this week, Tony Booba lost, unexpectedly lost his wife Jan. Saw that pop up, saw him post about that on Facebook earlier this week, and yeah, it was really, really rough news to find out. I felt terrible for him, just like I said, suddenly, like, I think it was cardiac arrest was what happened. And so I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Tony and let him know. I doubt he's watching, and he's got bigger fish to fry, more things on his plate right now. But I just wanted to, say we're all thinking of him, and hopefully he's pulling through this because I know him and his wife were pretty close, and you could see, like, if you're friends with him on Facebook, you see a lot of photos and a lot of interactions with him and his wife, and it was just really, really rough news to find out earlier this week. So we're thinking of you, Tony, and we hope you're doing well, my man. Hope you're doing okay. Because you guys know how much I love Tony and his work, and from all accounts, like I said, I met Tony last year at Living Dead Weekend, a couple of years ago at Living Dead Weekend. Was the first and only time I've met Tony so far, and had a really good, like, 30-minute conversation. You couldn't ask for a nicer guy, and just super interesting and super welcoming, and just really, really just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And my friend Michelle, like, he just was like, hey, I guess she reached out or he reached out. I'm not sure how it worked out, but she ended up, like, spending the day with him a couple months back in Braddock. He took her around and showed her Braddock and all this stuff. And it's like the nicest guy in the friggin' world. So I hated hearing that earlier this week. So Tony, we're thinking of you, man. I hope you pull through. And I can't imagine. I think they were together for quite a while. So yeah, Tony, thinking of you, man. Hope you're doing well out there, or as well as you can be, I guess. And also wanted to mention we also lost another member of the Dawn of the Dead family. buddy friend of the channel, Sonic Owl, reached out to me on Facebook. Um, I guess it was earlier this week as well. Reached out to me to let me know that Gary Hartman had passed away. Now, Gary Hartman's one of the bikers, which Sonic Owl was. That's his thing. Like, you want to know anything about the biker gang and Dawn of the Dead and their lives and how that all came about? Like, Sonic Owl's the man for that. And he let me know that he unfortunately passed away. I think it was a few weeks ago, but he just found out earlier this week. But wanted to give a mention to Gary as well, and you know, it's unfortunate, man. Like, you know, these movies are old, and you know, it's like these people aren't going to be around forever. But again, I always tell you guys, like, if you ever get a chance to go to a convention or a screening or a film festival or anything that these people are at, and you've always wanted to meet them, and just, you know, it's like meeting people at a convention's not about, oh, I met so and so, we're best friends now, and look at my autograph and my picture and all this, and oh, I spent, you know, $300 at Linda Blair's table and she told me to go fuck myself. Like, that's a lot of the experience that you'll get if you're going for that particular reason. But if you're going to, especially these, you know, Romero films and these Pittsburgh actors and these people that did this stuff years ago and never thought anybody would ever give a shit about it, you know, 30, 40, 50 years later, to go up to them and express how much you appreciated them and how much that their contribution to these films influenced you or helped you through a tough time in life, or you know, it just however it affected you, just go up to them and let them know. And 9 times out of 10, they're just for one, they can't believe that they had that kind of effect on something that they just kind of did and kind of forgot about, and then years later, you know, to find out how much it's meant to so many people. I mean, hell, David Emge's family, when we went to David Emge's funeral here in Evansville, you know, his family had no idea how beloved he was around the world until he passed away. And then in the obituary, you know, where people could leave messages, there was just people from all over the world, just hundreds and hundreds of people chiming in, and they were just blown away. They were just like, we had no idea that David had so many fans. It's like, yeah, well, we're you know, me and Will showed up. We're two of his biggest fans. So yeah, it's important to just, you know, and there was a funny thing about Sonic Owl shared a story with me on Facebook the other day in the Messenger, and let me know, you know, his son had reached out to Alex and let him know that his father passed away, and how proud his father was of this, you know, of being a part of Dawn of the Dead. And of course, his dad was a, you know, biker back in the day and had, you know, lived a life. But this one little thing he did back in the day, Dawn of the Dead, and Sonic Owl had actually created the IMDb page and added him to IMDb. So his son said his dad was always so proud and would always brag to his friends and show his friends, like, oh, I have my own IMDb page. You know, I'm something. I'm a big deal. But just little things like that, man. It's so cool to hear. But yeah, just tough news. Couple of couple of sad news stories, but I just wanted to mention those here before we got started, and especially to Tony, like, you know, hopefully he's doing okay, and we're all thinking of you because, you know, you guys know I'm a huge Tony Booba fan, and yeah, and for a guy that never seems to be in a bad mood or, you know, mean spirited in any way, it always sucks when something horrible happens to somebody like that, because it's like, you know, what did they do to deserve that? But again, it's you know, it's the most unfortunate aspect of life. But anyway, thinking of you, and rest in peace to Jan, Tony Booba's wife, Jan Booba, I guess, and Gary Hartman, who was the biker in Dawn of the Dead. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. And then another thing I wanted to mention before I hit you guys up in the chat. And then we'll get started in this top 10, because like I said, I wanted to get started early and get it going tonight. But over on the Garf Network, over here on YouTube, if you guys aren't subscribed to the Garf, go subscribe. Garf Network on YouTube. They had a really interesting interview this past week with Joetta McClain from Season of the Witch, Jack's wife. And it was really the first time I've ever actually listened to her talk about her experience working with George and working on, you know, Jack's wife, and her feelings and thoughts about it all these years later. It's a really interesting interview. It's about a 35-40 minute interview. Really fun stuff. We found out some really interesting tidbits that I did not expect, particularly When it come to her experience working with Ray Lane, apparently she was not a very big fan of Ray Lane on the set, which I did not know. So that was interesting to hear about. Of course, her memories of working with George and working with Jan White, and her relationship with Bill Thunhurst, who got her kind of got her the job, from what I remember. But yeah, check it out over on the Garf Network here on YouTube. Go give them a sub. Like that video as well. And I don't know, check it out. It's a really interesting interview with somebody that, again, you don't hear a lot from. So check that out over there on the Garf, the Joetta McClain interview. So I just want to give that a quick shout out as well. But let's see who we got in the chat here. I saw, speaking of the man himself with the killer lighting setup, Matt, what's going on, man? Drone of the Dead, jumping in for a minute to say hello. Hope everyone has a great week. Good to see you, my man. I think I don't know, man. If you're not around later, I think you're gonna be interested in my my top 3 picks, we'll say, because you're kind of the one that inspired this top 10 list. So, and I always do the 10 questions when I have somebody on for the first time, and one of the questions is always, what's your favorite Romero score or soundtrack? And I realized, I was like, oh, I've never really given my definitive list, and I feel like it's only fair if I ask somebody else what their favorite is. I should be able to name mine and defend my position as well. So, but good to see you, my man. Hope you're doing all right. We got Jeff. Down is up. Down is up. Or no, I always do that fucking wrong. Down is up. What's down, Jeff? What's up, Michael? I so love the thumbnail for tonight's stream. I've always wanted to use that for some reason. I don't know, the whole Bill Clinton thing. I remember seeing that years ago, and it was him holding, and I didn't know what the hell it was. I thought it was a real fucking photo at first, like years ago, like before we really knew what memes were. I saw a video or a photo of him holding an album from a band that I'm a big fan of, called the Get Up Kids. One of my favorite albums of all time. And there's a picture of Bill Clinton holding this album. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, Bill Clinton listens to the Get Up Kids? I didn't realize it was like you could Photoshop these things. Because like I said, this is probably, over a decade ago that I first saw that. But I've always wanted to use that for something. And I was like, yeah, it's the perfect opportunity to kind of have some fun with it and do something goofy. So yeah, I decided to use it for tonight. But what's up, my man? Good to see you as always. And yes, everybody go check out Matt's videos, Drone of the Dead, at Drone of the Dead. Check him out, a lot of location stuff. He's got some concert stuff on there as well, a little bit of everything. But I'm telling you, his location stuff that he shoots with those drones, or the drone, I guess he has one drone. I don't know how many drones he has. I know he has one less drone from the last time he was in Pittsburgh. But yeah, everybody go check him out, give him a sub, Drone of the Dead. If you're a fan of horror and movie locations, and it's some of the most beautiful movie location footage you'll see on YouTube, bar none. Ed, what's going on, man? Ed, Trader Music and Entertainment. Hey guys, listen to my Romero movie soundtrack vinyls this week, have you? I have been, man. Ever since I decided to start to do this show, I've been digging in, because that's part of the process of figuring out what goes where. Listening, digging in, and really, because a lot of the times, especially if you just listen to like a soundtrack or score, turntable or whatnot, you just listen to it, like sometimes that plays into it more so than the music that you remember and how it was used in the film. But yeah, man, I've been digging in deep for the past few days, and I got them all pulled out tonight. We're gonna take a look at some of these that I got, and appreciate you plugging the show on your Facebook page earlier, man. And I think you may have given a pretty big spoiler without even knowing it, but we'll get onto that. But hope you're doing well, man. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Steven, what's going on, my man? Howdy, campers. Howdy, Steven. Hope you're doing well. We got Stezio in the house. Stezio DeCardi. What's up, my man? Good to see Stezio. Let's see, Jeff saying it's brutal here in New York City, freezing cold and snowing. Yeah, we've had like some snow off and on all week, but today it was just like bitter cold. Like you didn't even want to go outside. It was like the first day this year that we've gotten that, just brutal cold here in Indiana. Bonnie, what's going on, Bonnie? Good to see you. Hello, crocheting and listening tonight. As usual, I always appreciate you stopping in, saying hello, and chiming in when you feel it. And I will say that's the thing about Bonnie, man. Bonnie will lurk in the shadows and she's listening, but when she's got something to say, it's pretty it's some good shit. So I always look forward to her comments throughout the stream. I'm like, oh, Bonnie said something. What is it? And it's always like a movie recommendation or something. It's like, all right, that's cool. I dig that. And speaking of movie recommendations, we talked last week on the show. We talked about Rolling Thunder, the Tommy Lee Jones, William Devane movie that I hadn't seen yet. So as soon as the show was over, I tracked it down. It's actually on YouTube. So I watched it a few days ago, and I fucking love that movie. So shout out to you guys for giving me that recommendation. Love me some Rolling Thunder now. Big Rolling Thunder fan now. And I was ecstatic. Like I jumped out of my chair when I noticed that it was Paul Partain, Franklin from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, had the role of the of Tommy Lee Jones's brother-in-law near the end of the movie. I was like, oh my god, it's fucking Paul. I've never seen him anything else. So, but yeah, great movie. Loved it. Appreciate you guys for turning me on to that one for sure. Stesio, it's 64 degrees in Florida. Must be nice. Although I don't, I appreciate some good cold weather, man. I don't know if I could hack it in a climate that's always nice, like a California or a Florida or something like that. Man, I like I said, I'm a layers guy, so I'm totally cool with some cold weather every now and then. But sometimes it just gets to like a bitter coldness where you're just like, you can only be outside for so long before you start to lose feeling in your extremities. It's saying YouTube shows are supposed to be homemade looking. Don't worry too much. Thank you. This one's definitely homemade looking. I don't even know if the fucking coming in clear or not tonight. I went back and noticed I had some technical issues last week. I was just like, God damn, again? Like, why does this always happen? Why does this always happen to me? Let's see. Thank you very much, Jeff. Jeff saying number 1 has to be Creepshow. Interesting. It's on the list. Will it be number 1? We'll see. Steven says you're honest up until the Martin bias. I'm honest I'm honest about my Martin bias. Will that count? Does that work? I'll let you know. Like I've said, like Martin's not for everybody. Some people are just not gonna like Martin. They're not gonna dig it. But I just think the world of that movie. So I do have a little bit of bias towards Martin. Will I with the soundtrack though? With Donald Rubinstein's score for Martin. How do I feel about that? I don't know how much I've really talked about that before. I've talked about the movie to death and Amplis's performance and Braddock. Lord knows I've talked about Braddock to death, but I don't know how much I've really dug into my feelings and thoughts about Rubinstein's score for that. So, but well, stay tuned. Jeff saying I heard that, very sad. Yeah, about Tony and Gary. Yeah. Steven says very sad. My condolences to Tony and his family for sure. Stesio, so sorry for Tony. Yeah, I've been thinking about that all week, man. I especially because he when in his Facebook post went into how he found her and how it all happened and stuff like that, and I couldn't imagine going through that, especially with somebody you've been with for years and years and years. So yeah, I agree. Well, it's closing in on an end, but hey, that's the thing. Like everybody's like, oh, fucking, fuck 2025, or fuck, especially back, fuck 2020. Like, what a horrible year. And yeah, I get that to a point, but it's like every year, bad shit's gonna happen, good shit's gonna happen. I try to tune most of the bad shit out as much as I can, and just kind of focus on the positives of every year. I wouldn't say I'm like the eternal optimist, or I'm just so positive, like everything's great, like obviously not like that's, but at the same time it's like I try to focus on my life, what's happened to me, where have I been, what have I done this year, what have I accomplished, and try not to worry about too much of it, because there's so much bad news out there, man. If you focus on that shit too much, it'll get to you for sure. Stegio says we're all getting old, especially me, and it's so hard watching friends and family go. Yeah, yeah, that's it's the hard part about aging, but it's also that's kind of we all we're all gonna be there someday. Nobody's gonna be here forever, and so enjoy it as much as you can while you can. Um, and live with no regrets. So I always say, like, nobody's ever laying on their deathbed saying, "Oh, I wish I would have done less." I've never heard that story. Where somebody's on the deathbed saying, like, "Man, I did too much in my life. I would have loved to have just, sat at home for another day and twiddled my dick and watched Price is Right one more time, baby, one more time." No, I've never heard that. So take advantage of every opportunity and do what you want to do while you can still do it because you know that's my way of thinking, I guess. Um, David was such a yeah. I never actually met David. I never got to meet him. Um, but funny enough, like I met his family, and his family's all just the nicest, sweetest bunch of people um, you could ever hope for. But yeah, was one of my big regrets was I never actually got to meet Dave Emge while he was still here. Yeah, I agree with that, Jeff. Anyone who was fortunate enough to be in Dawn was truly blessed. I agree with that. And to me, it's a lot different than, oh, I was an extra in, whatever movie, some Hollywood movie or whatever. Because Dawn was such a local community thing. It's like everybody, like most of the people that were involved in Dawn as extras, zombies, the bikers, whatever, the people that worked on it are still local to that area. So it was like they were just happened to be in that place at that time. And it was a part of, it was just something that they did on the spur of the moment where it was just like, oh, they're shooting this movie down at the mall. You want to go check it out? Sure, why not? And then, you see these people, especially like a Living Dead weekend, that were like zombies or, background characters or had small little roles in the movie. And to us, they're big celebrities, but to them, they're just like, wow, this is something I spent a couple of days doing, 50 years ago. And here I am back at this mall signing autographs and, being treated like a VIP. And it's funny, if you go back and listen to that, conversation I had with George Dimick, and he kind of laid it out in kind of that way, and she was just like, "I'm nobody, like what?" And he's like, "I'm here at Living Dead Weekend," and everybody's just like, "Oh, it's such an honor to meet you. It's such a pleasure to meet you." And he's like, "I'm just a fan. Like I just happen to be in the right place at the right time, and here I am all these years later, and it's just such a surreal feeling for me." And I'm just like, "Yeah, but no matter how small or you know." The role that they had in either the making of the movie or the being in the movie, it's like they were still part of something that touched and affected so many people around the world. Whether they were a zombie or a biker or they were, just a helping hand on the crew, it doesn't matter. It's like a great artist. It's like if you look at a work of art and it's like every little brushstroke helped create that work of art, that painting, every little brushstroke. If that brushstroke wasn't there, if the artist hadn't done that brushstroke, like it wouldn't be the same painting, and it may not have the same effect that it does. But the fact that that was there, if that makes any sense, it's like it's the pieces of the puzzle. It's like you can't. It's like everything. Like if you look at a movie or a piece of a work of art, it's like a puzzle. It's like you need all those little pieces in place. Some pieces are bigger than others for sure, but still, there's those little bitty pieces that if they were missing, there'd just be a big hole in it. It wouldn't be the fucking same. It'd be like, oh, it's missing this piece. What is this? Um, and I think that's just like a philosophical thing that I've always thought about. It's like everything happens for a reason. Everything goes together in a certain way. Um, and if like perfect, like some of the zombies, like man, if Sharon and Clayton Hill weren't in Dawn of the Dead, would it be the same movie? I don't know. It's like you could think like, oh, what a small, insignificant role. They were just zombies, but it's like they were the nurse zombie. I think about the guy when I saw Dawn in the theater for the first time in the 3D. the guy sitting next to me that obviously had never seen this movie before. And the one thing that that I'm sure he took home that night and it's stuck with him was the Jay Stover rifle zombie. Every time you see Jay Stover, he's got the rifle pointed to his head, and he would just crack up every single time he saw that. And you'd hear him like, "I still got the fucking gun." Like, if that wasn't in Dawn of the Dead, like maybe that guy wouldn't take anything away from that movie, and he'd just be like, "Ah, I didn't do anything for me." But like every little thing matters. So to me, like all of these people matter in their own particular way. Anyway, I got off the beaten track on that one, but yeah, man, check out that interview. I think you'd really dig it. She had some choice words for Ray Lane for sure. They asked her about Ray Lane. She was like, "Oh, that's an interesting question." So yeah, me and Ray didn't really click, which is interesting because they kind of play, boyfriend girlfriend. They have in Season of the Witch. So it's interesting to hear that her and Ray just, didn't click, didn't really get along at all. Um, so yeah, I thought that was interesting. But yeah, there's some really good tidbits in that, some really good, interesting stories and stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out over on the Garf Network. And that was conducted by our buddy Matt Blasey and Eric Kent. So good shit. I always love a good interview with somebody like that, with people that know what to ask her. They know what they're talking about, so they know what questions to ask. Blake, what's going on, man? Blake Allen, good to see you. Says my favorite will always be the soundtrack when Peter and Roger walk into that basement cage of 107 with all the dead. Yeah, the Goblin. That, thinking about like just the tracks in general on that album, that may be my favorite. I love that. I prefer the alternate version of the Dawn theme as opposed to the actual track one or whatever. I don't know, I've always been more into that alternate take. Yeah, I agree with that. Nope, there we go. Matt saying, thanks for the kind words, dude. Working on Invasion USA, The Annihilators, and The Visitor. Got some stuff in the pipeline probably after the beginning of the year. Very cool. Yeah, everybody go check them out. Drone of the Dead. Especially if you're a fan of genre films. I mean, the one he just did for Cannibal Apocalypse was interesting. It was interesting to see because Matt not only gets what it looks like now with his drone, but he also compares it, has like perfect comparison shots from the film. And so it's always just so interesting to see like how much has changed, and sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse. But like to me, like that looked like every area looked like, oh, that's glowed up, as the kids say, over the years, because everything looked, all the locations now look super nice, where you compare it to Dawn of the Dead and you look at like, oh, what the mall looked like back then, what it looks like now, and it's just like Matt says you should let us do a show where we play Uno reverse and ask you your own. Okay, I'm down for that. I can do that. Although I feel like if you've watched me babble on for hours and hours for the last 3 years, 4 years, whatever it's been, you can probably figure out all the answers to those questions. But I'm down. Put me on the hot seat. You guys know I'll be honest about it. Steven says, glad to hear it. Rolling Thunder is an awesome film. I agree. I was very, it's definitely my style of film. And it's interesting when, because Matt's brought up that George was originally attached to direct that at one point for AIP. And I was watching it. It was one of those moments where I was watching the film and I was like, man, it was hard for me to imagine George doing it justice, kind of doing it as well as John Flynn, the guy who ended up directing it. Because it's set in Texas. To me it felt very Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not just because of the Paul Partain cameo or whatever you want to call it, but just because like it was just the people, the accents, everybody talked and looked like they were from Texas. It had a really legit, genuine feel, and so I don't know if that would have changed or not with a different filmmaker, but I know Paul Schrader was the writer on that, and I remember hearing a story. Because Tarantino's talked about that movie in the past before I really watched it or knew anything about it. But I knew Paul Schrader was the writer of that, and he was never really that big of a fan of it because they had changed so much about it. So I'm sure Romero would have done more the Paul Schrader screenplay than what Flynn did with it. But who knows? Who's to say? But I enjoyed it. I loved it. I thought it was great. It's definitely one I definitely need to pick up on physical media somewhere. Jeff, wouldn't we all, my man? Wouldn't we all? That's one of those scary things. Like, I know it's out there, and I know it can be seen, but will I ever get the opportunity to see it? I don't know, and I don't like. It scares me. I got to see it before I die. Blake says got to meet David. He really liked NASCAR. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Talked about it a lot when I told him I was from Alabama, and he talked of Talladega races. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Well, he is from Indiana, so I mean, we're right down the road. He's from Evansville. We're right down the road from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, home of the Indy 500. So I guess that makes sense. Yeah, it's pretty cool though. Didn't know that. He's also a big Yankees fan. I didn't know that either. Yeah, that's true, Jeff. Didn't Clayton also handle weapons on Dawn? Yeah, Clayton, they definitely did more, which is what I'm saying. It's like they all did so much. They weren't just, sweater zombie, nurse zombie. They did so much behind the scenes as well that, it's like, would Dawn still exist? Probably. Would it be the film that we all know and love? Probably not, even down to just the smallest little details, like whether it's the rifle zombie or how we've talked about, the bathing suit zombie, like all those little things that, and those little nuances to that film. It's just like, change any of those, and it's like, would it miss something? And I don't know. I always feel like it would. And I think that goes for a lot of George's stuff, because George was so collaborative, and it was such a, like, to me, nobody's captured Pittsburgh. No film has ever captured Pittsburgh. The vibe of Pittsburgh, the feel of Pittsburgh, the way that Dawn of the Dead does, and the way that George does. Because, like, watching Dawn of the Dead, you feel the community aspect of it. You can see, I don't know, just the mall, the Iron City beers cracking open with the National Guardsmen and stuff. Just the landscapes, like, no, it feels like you're there, which is weird. I guess is why the first time I visited Pittsburgh years ago, the first time as soon as I got there, I felt like I'd already been there. It's like, oh, I know this place. You see all the names of the towns on the emergency rescue stations down here, like, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Latrobe, Pennsylvania, McKeesport. And when you go to Pittsburgh and you see the signs for all these places, you're like, oh, I know that place. I've heard of that place. Oh, Butler, Mercer, I know that place, because you're familiar with it, because it's, so I don't know. I think that's why people that love these films, like myself, when we go to Pittsburgh, when we go to these places, it's like we know them already, because we grew up. It's almost like we grew up there in a weird way. Monroeville. The first time I see the Monroeville sign, it's like, oh, Monroeville. Like, I'm probably one in a million that has that feeling when they get to Pittsburgh and they see Monroeville. I don't know. Anywho, get through the rest of these real quick, and then we'll get on to the countdown. Matt says, I agree. I feel that way about you guys. If Dawn didn't exist, I would have met some of the best friends in my life. I agree with that as well. And I think that's the beautiful thing about, Living Dead Weekend, and, just movies in general, man. Like, to me, like, when I get on here and do this, like, this is just me getting on here and giving everybody an open forum. It's like a movie club. Like, let's get together once a week and just talk movies, in particular Romero movies, the specific niche of movies that we all, love and love to talk about. So I fully agree with that. It's growing up, like, it's like before the internet, before YouTube and live streaming and stuff like I'm doing now. It's like, I grew up playing music, being in bands and stuff. So pretty much all my closest friends were the people that I was in bands with and played music with. So it's like, when I wasn't doing that anymore, I didn't, we couldn't, it's not like you could just go and go to a bar and find another Dawn of the Dead fan. It's like, I never had that before. That was always my thing. Nobody like I had friends that were into horror and friends that were into movies, but Romero and Don, like, oh, that's Mike's thing. Oh, that's Mike's thing. Oh yeah, yeah, okay, Mike, yeah. But then you get on here and you meet other people, and you're just like, oh wow, you guys know. It's like I said, when you go to Living Good Weekend the first time, it's like, oh, I'm meeting people that speak my language. What a refreshing feeling. Um, Jeff says, yeah, the basement scene with the Goblin score scared the hell out of me when the first time I saw it. Nightmare fuel. Yeah, it still works to this day. When he's walking in there and you see just they're all piled up and feeding but I think the thing that makes it work is it's not like now I mean, it goes back to my review last week of Queens of the Dead, and one of the things about Queens of the Dead I mentioned that I didn't like was the zombies in it, the zombie aspect of the film. It was like I loved the movie in and of itself. It was like I said, it was the most fun I'd had watching a zombie movie since probably Shaun of the Dead. So if you guys haven't checked it out yet, I recommend checking it out. It's like I said, it's not going to be for everybody, but I had a lot of fun with it. But the zombie aspect is like they were made to be jokes. Like they were just like, it's a fucking, it's a zombie movie. And it was like, but in Dawn of the Dead, the zombies are still treated as respected things, like people, Um, so it gives that scene so much more power when Peter and Roger are executing them one by one, and it's not like, oh, I'm a zombie hunter and this is badass, brother. It's more about like the just the human aspect of it, of like these people that are like lost souls that are trapped in these bodies that are just doing the eating human flesh. And they don't know why. They're that's the beautiful. That's the thing I love about Dawn of the Dead zombies. Everybody's like, oh, the blue faced zombies and blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, but they're still human on some level, and I think that's what separates them in my opinion. Steven says, I hate to say this because I love Romero, but he may have made it too deep. It worked better as a true grindhouse film. I kind of agree with that. Believe it or not, I do kind of agree with that. After watching the film, I was like, yeah, it's. But I also think that the film itself actually has some really deep stuff in it. Like I think Rolling Thunder we're talking about. I think there's more to that movie than just your typical revenge grindhouse flick or whatever. Like the William Devane character is actually very interesting. Just what he goes like to the point where by the end you realize he doesn't really give a shit about his wife. Like because in the movie his wife is killed, and his wife and his kid are killed. Spoiler alert: his wife and his kid are killed. He's more getting revenge for his son being killed. The wife, who he comes back from being a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and she's tells him she's leaving him for somebody else, and so at that point he's just like, fuck her, I don't not really worried about her. It's more about, and he plays this like just guy who's just completely dead inside, like there's nothing human, like he tries to have a romantic relationship and it just doesn't work because there's nothing left inside. Like he's just gone, and his only interest right now is to get the revenge for against the people that took his son away from him. It's a really interesting performance. Tommy Lee Jones is great in it too. Some great one-liners in it. I love the line where when Tommy Lee Jones is in the room with the prostitute, and she's like, he pulls his gun out because the shit's going down. He pulls his gun out, and she's like, "Oh my god, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm gonna go kill a bunch of people." It's just like just a very straight ahead, serious reaction. Oh, I'm gonna go kill a bunch of people. The scene where William Devane tells Tommy Lee he found the people that killed his son, and Tommy Lee doesn't say anything. He just kind of looks up and he's like, I'll go get my stuff. It's just like, it's so badass. But like, there's levels to these characters. They're both of them are fucked from being, held prisoner for all those years, over in Vietnam. So they come back home just completely dead inside. So yeah, those are the types of people you don't want to fuck with, especially if you're gonna rob them for a fucking suitcase full of silver dollars or whatnot. Paul, what's up, my man? Paul Brooks, good to see you. Says, howdy folks, sorry I'm late. Happy Sunday night. You're not late, you're just in time. We're about to get the countdown started. I said I'm going to try to get it started on time here, and here I am babbling 45 minutes in. So You know how it goes. A few more of these and we'll get started. So I'm going to go out on a limb. Your favorite Romero score, Mr. Rogers Goes to the Hospital. Mr. Rogers Gets a Tonsillectomy. You got it. Very experimental score for the time. Which George always said, like, that was probably the scariest thing he ever directed. Was that Mr. Rogers segment. Because if you watch it, it is very, I don't know, very experimental feeling, kind of unnerving in a weird way. And you look up and you see their kind eyes. Jeff says, very true. I remember the first time I drove through the tunnel and it opened up to Pittsburgh. I felt like I'd already been there. Very surreal. Best feeling in the world. You drive through that Fort Pitt tunnel and you come out on the other end and it's like, oh, there it is. Pittsburgh. Speaking of the man, so he must have sensed that I had mentioned him earlier. What's up, Will? Been a while. Good to see you, my man. Hope you're doing well. It's been a while since you've been on too. I have to get you on again soon. That's right. Don't worry still. Oh, throwbacks all got big dicks. So you're right about that, Will. We are all a bunch of throwbacks here tonight. Well, except Bonnie. Bonnie's like Sarah. She's probably when she comes on, when she's listening to these streams, all you fucking nut bars and my bullshit, you guys in the chat, she probably feels like Sarah, trapped in the fucking cave with a bunch of crazy motherfuckers, a bunch of anthropological curiosities, as she says. Blake says this must be where they dumped them. Then you need more men. It's all been done, man. It's all been done. Jesus Christ. Steven says, true, but Romero might have really focused on the PTSD of Vietnam and not so much on the action. It's true. Yeah, we'll never know. I've never read the original screenplay, the original script that Paul Schrader wrote, so I don't know how different it is than the version we got, but I like it. I like it for what it is. Steven says, now Major, I want those. Yeah, what a weird thing. Like, you're gonna rob somebody of something, like it's a briefcase full of silver dollars. All right, let's kill everybody and take them. You know it's true, buddy. You know it's true. Sitting there looking around like, what am I doing here? But all right, good to see everybody. Hope everybody is ready to get to this. Like I said, it's my top 10, my definitive top 10 Romero film soundtracks or scores. What's the difference between a score and a soundtrack? To me, like a score, I guess, is music made for the film, it's like the laid on top of the film. You know, that's like, and a soundtrack is like music that's used for the film. So, but yes, top 10 Romero film soundtracks, and it's an interesting, because you think about Romero and his use of music in his films, and it's so eclectic. It's so all over the place. One film to another, it's so different. Like you think of some of his contemporaries. You think of John Carpenter. There's a specific John Carpenter style soundtrack to his films, mostly because he produced and recorded and wrote all of them. So you have that John Carpenter style of a soundtrack in Carpenter movies. Of course, with Cronenberg, you always had Howard Shore. So you hear, you think Cronenberg, you can think of like, oh, Howard Shore is going to do the score, and it's going to have a particular sound or a particular flavor. Another one that always comes to mind is like Tim Burton. Any Tim Burton movie, Danny Elfman's doing the score, and it's going to have a particular sound and a feel to it. You can always pick it out, whether you know what movie it is or not. You think, oh, Tim Burton, Danny Elfman. But Romero used so many different styles and so many different types of music in his films throughout the year. Like from one film to another, like it was something different. And I think that just came naturally to George, and it goes back to George's urge to always use library music and library tracks, because as an editor, he would like to he always said he liked to to edit to music when he's making the cuts of these films. So he would use pre-recorded stuff all the time. So I think his tastes were so eclectic and what he wanted each film to be that they're all so different. So like if I did a top 10 countdown of Carpenter stuff, I love Carpenter's scores. But at the same time, even when he reached out and brought in Ennio Morricone to do the Thing score, even though it's not Carpenter, still kind of sounds like a John Carpenter score. Um, so I think I always thought this was a fascinating list to compile because they're all so different, and George always kind of dipped his toe in so many different types of music that he would use in his films, whether it was jazzy or, just kind of old school needle drop music, as they used to call it. Of course, you have the John Harrison style, which is more synth, 80s sounding stuff. So I mean, there's so many different types of scores that that Romero used in his films. So that also kind of made it a little more difficult to kind of narrow it down and put this in some type of definitive list, because I like all of these for different reasons and different things, you know. Tickle my ass with a feather, as they say, when it comes to these soundtracks. But I think I got a pretty good list here, and we'll get it rolling. Okay, so yeah, movie scores and underscore soundtracks, upfront music, says Ed. That's what I thought. But I always kind of get those mixed up in when I talk about, like, Goblins soundtrack for Dawn of the Dead is more. Would that fall more into a score or a soundtrack? I don't know. Either way, you guys know what the fuck I'm talking about. Jeff says Romero soundtracks are as legendary as Carpenter's for me. Yeah, I agree with that. Of course, because I'm a Romero fan, but also, like I said, they're so different and they're so unique, one film to another, that it always feels like, depending on your mood, there's there's a score for that. There's a soundtrack for that. I've always kind of appreciated that. And what's up, my man? Kenneth Costa's in the house. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. This is excited to hear. Well, let's get it, man. Let's get after it. So we'll start it out here at number 10. I'm going to throw up images here because a couple of these I don't own on anything. Which, doing research for this, I realized, like, man, I need to pick some of this shit up. But number 10 on my list, this is an interesting one because it's kind of a mix. I'm kind of taking two things into consideration here for this one. But number 10 on my list, I got to go with Donald Rubinstein's score for Bruiser, 2000's Bruiser. When I first saw Bruiser, I remember thinking the score was a little wonky, a little all over the place. It's very jazzy in places. And to me, some of it doesn't work, especially in some of the more horror scenes, if you will, where there's more suspense. And like sometimes Donald has trouble kind of getting away from the jazzy, which is just his style. And I think it's fine because that kind of gives Bruiser the feel that it has. But like I said, there are a few scenes in Bruiser that I think could have used something else than what they had there. But overall, I think like some of the music in it's really like just beautiful. Some of the piano stuff, I know the opening music when the film's opening with the piano, and it has a very relaxing vibe to it. So I've always kind of just been like 50-50 on the score itself. And I love Donald Rubinstein. I love a lot of his stuff. And this is not his one and only appearance on this list for sure. But when it came to number 10 on my list, it was definitely a toss up between this and There's Always Vanilla for me. Vanilla has some really interesting, like psychedelic, electronic, early 70s stuff, and the use of some of the actual songs in that film I've always loved, like the Marianne Faithfull, how should I your true love know. I'm a sucker for that type of shit. So some of the actual music that's in it I always like. But when it comes to Bruiser, the thing that put it over the top for me, still to this day, from the first time that I saw it, was the incorporation of the Misfits. When they go into that fucking party, that costume party, and the Misfits are on the stage, they're playing, Descending Angel. Whoa. And as an old school, like, punk rock kid from back in the day, like, you couldn't beat that. Like, as a Romero fan, like, the first time I saw Bruiser and here's the Misfits in a Romero film, I'm like, okay, I'm sold. Because I remember the first time I saw Bruiser, I didn't love it. I didn't quite get it yet. Because I was thinking, like, oh, Romero, there's gonna be a lot of gore, and it's gonna be, it's gonna be fucking killer. It's it looks like a slasher movie, so it's a Romero slasher movie. How cool is this? But the first time I saw it, like, as a 13-year-old kid or whatever I was at the time, I was like with it, but I was like, all right, I'm kind of waiting for something to really reach out and grab me by the nuts, and then all of a sudden, here's the Misfits, and I love, and of course the Misfits got involved because George ended up doing the music video for the Misfits for their song Scream, which is on YouTube. If you guys haven't seen that before, you can definitely check that out. But yeah, I always loved, I've always been a big fan of the Misfits and the song choices that they use in that. And it's kind of like the background throughout this, at which that costume party is like my dream, like, Halloween party. Misfits on the stage, everybody's dressed up, and that's my dream party. So I had to include the Bruiser soundtrack on this list at number 10 because, like I said, the Donald Rubinstein stuff, it's about 50-50 for me. I can take some, leave some. Yeah, I think it works in certain parts for sure, and it has some real melodic, beautiful stuff to it. But the fact that the Misfits were in a Romero film, I still love it to this day. So the old school punk rock fan of me had to put Bruiser above Merry and Faithful, and and There's Always Vanilla. So number 10 on my list, Bruiser. And I'll give the credit to Donald Rubinstein, but also credit goes to the Misfits as well. And again, it's one of those I don't own on any kind of physical media. But they do have there's two different versions of this out there there's one. Yeah, I guess Perseverance put out both of these. 2004 was a split release with tracks from Sorry Town, aka Pollock, which was the film that Ed Harris directed that he reached out to Donald Rubinstein to do the score for. That came out in 2004. I don't have that. Then there's also a specific, the one that I'm showing here, a Bruiser soundtrack that Perseverance put out in 2006 and both of them are on CD. It's not out on vinyl yet. So, but yeah, I've always been a big fan of the Misfits and couldn't leave them off this list. Could not leave them off this list. And again, it's one of those scores that's, it doesn't overpower. Like, it's not like Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead where it plays almost a character in the movie. It's more of like it plays more like your typical score does, where it's just kind of background mood music type of thing. So number 10 on my list, Donald Rubinstein's Bruiser. Steven says still haven't seen this fully yet, so no argument from me yet. Okay, there you go. You got to get with it, man. You got to watch it. Stegio says recently bought Bruiser, fell asleep after we watch it. There you go. And it's one of those, it's like, it's not for everybody, but I think the thing that has really kept it at the top of my list, because I would put Bruiser probably in my top 10 favorite Romero films somewhere. And I think the thing about it is, like, if you know where George's career and where his life was at the time, and then you kind of incorporate that into what Bruiser is and how angry of a film Bruiser is. To me, it's one of George's most personal films, and the most personal film that George made. God, it may be his most personal film since Night Riders in 1980. Creepshow is Creepshow. Day of the Dead, I wouldn't say it's a personal film. So yeah, if you're a fan of Romero and you're interested in his mind and what was going on with him during that time period, coming off of the 90s, which was, development hell for George, you can see the anger and George kind of portraying himself into this character of Henry Creedlow, and you know, it's interesting in that way, if nothing else. And for Peter Stormare, I don't care what Matt says, Peter Stormare is amazing in Bruiser. So Ed says, if memory serves, didn't George and Donald not even work in person for Bruiser? George talked to him over the phone only. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. That's very possible, because I think Donald was living in New Mexico at the time, probably. So yeah, that's very possible. I'm sure, because I would be surprised if they actually had Donald doing the score over the film. It was probably just a collection of stuff that Donald had written that George kind of incorporated into Bruiser. But I don't remember for sure, though. You could be correct about that. Holy shit! Blake says, just saw Rob Reiner and his wife was murdered. Are you serious? No way. Well, hold on. We got to pause this. Where did you see that at? We were sitting here earlier talking about, you know, trying to tune out as much of the bad news as you possibly can. Well, I'll be damned. Oh my God. 15 minutes ago, People magazine reporting Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle were killed by their son. Wow. Discovered dead. Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner were killed by their son Nick. Multiple sons confirmed to People. Wow. That's crazy. On Sunday, December 14th, at about 3:30 p.m., the Los Angeles Fire Department was called to a home to provide medical aid, and the LAFD told People, People magazine, not just random people. Upon arrival, they found a man, 78, and a woman, 68, dead. Sources confirms the victims were Rob and Michelle. So is his son still on the loose, or? Wow, that's crazy. That's awful. I don't see anything here about what happened with the son. Interesting. Oh, okay. Nick spoke. So it says in 2016 interview with People, Nick spoke about his years-long struggle with drug addiction, which began in his early teens and eventually left him living on the streets. He said he cycled in and out of rehab beginning around age 15, but as his addiction escalated, as he drifted farther from home and spent significant stretches homeless in multiple states. So I guess he had gotten clean, moved back home, I guess is what it's saying here too. Now I've been home for a really long time. Sort of gotten acclimated back to being in LA and being around my family, Nick told People at the time. That's awful, awful news. And of course, Rob Reiner. This is Spinal Tap. That's the big one for me. Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, Few Good Men. One of the great directors of my lifetime, for sure, at least. Wow, that's awful. Well, shit, Blake. Damn. Thanks for bringing the party down. Holy shit. Yeah. News breaking now. Yeah, Paul. Off topic, obviously, but he was a great director. Yeah, he was, man. Like I said, this is Spinal Tap. Like I said, playing in bands and stuff. When I first saw that, I was like, wow, this is it's so true to life. And of course, they just done the new Spinal Tap here recently, too. Wow. And I always remember watching Rob on like Real Time with Bill Maher. He would always come on Bill Maher all the time back in the day. Um, wow. Oh, real? What movie did you work on with Stesio? So I worked on a movie of his. Fucking hell. Yeah, I agree, Ken. Crazy. Hmm. Well, shit. Now I just want to talk about Rob Reiner. Misery, my God, one of the best Stephen King adaptations of all time. That's awful. I'm gonna take Bruiser off here. All right, well, I guess we can move on. That's terrible news. The fact that it was the son that did it, man. Hmm. Awful. Well, I guess we can try to get back to the countdown now. All right. All right, Bruiser at number 10, y'all. Damn, rest in peace, Rob Reiner. Now I'm so thrown off by that. I did not see that coming whatsoever. I'm gonna take a minute. I'm gonna take a second here to gather my thoughts for a second. Man, literally one of the best filmmakers of my generation. Like that was always a guy that growing up, it was like, man, that Rob Reiner. Like he made this movie, and you immediately know it's probably gonna be quality shit. So, damn. All right, well. But speaking, I guess we'll transition this way, I guess. Speaking of Stephen King adaptations, my number 9 on my list. Hold on one second. I saw Stesio chime in here. I was curious about what movie he'd worked on with Rob. Stesio saying American President. I was working at a prop house and finagled my way onto the set and stayed for a couple of days as photographer in the White House scenes. Very cool, man. Very cool. Oh yeah, definitely, Steven. How could I forget? Like that's one of my all-time favorite shows. I have the whole set, the entire series on DVD over here. All in the Family, yeah. Still peak Rob Reiner for me. You, Sir, Are a Meathead. Dead from the Neck Up. One of the greatest TV shows in history. R.I.P. Meathead. Yeah, I'm just thinking about him as a filmmaker, and I'm completely blank that he was fucking Michael Meathead, and fucking All in the Family. Yeah, that's awful. All right. Well, as I was saying, let's back to the countdown here. Rest in peace, Rob Reiner and his wife. That's a horrible, horrible story. A lot of bad news, guys. Past few days, the shit going on in Australia and Brown University. There was a shooting, and it's just like people are. To quote the great Jim Cornette, what the fuck is the matter with these people? I don't know. I don't get it. But all right. Let's try to get back on track here. Number 9 on my list, and this is one that I'd never really thought about much, outside of one particular aspect of it, until I was talking with to John Vulo about it, and he mentioned it as one of his like underrated picks for Romero soundtracks that he's really always been a fan of. And going back and listening to it and thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, it is one, especially from that time period. It's one of the only soundtracks or scores for Romero's films, like I said, during that time period that actually kind of stands out for me. And that, of course, is Christopher Young's score for The Dark Half. Christopher Young, of course, this is one of the only times that Romero really worked with like a big time composer for a movie score. Christopher Young's done tons and tons of movies. He's had a huge career doing movie scores, movie soundtracks over the years. Of course, Hellraiser was the big one. That was where I first heard the name Christopher Young. Was he did the score for Hellraiser, Hellraiser 2, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 in 85, did the score for that. Urban Legend in 80 or 98. The Grudge in 2004, The Grudge 2 in 2006, Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell in 2009. I mean, this dude, and that's just to name a few, and those are just like the horror ones. I mean, he's done from all genres, all walks of life throughout the 80s, 90s, still to this day, actually. Big time composer. So it was interesting. This one was an interesting pick for me because, like I said, it is one of the only times that George really worked with an actual composer, and this is actually like a film score that you can tell he wrote the music specifically, scene by scene, the way that a film score is um, typically composed for a film. It's not like I know Dario Argento always talked about he loved using Goblin and stuff for his films because he prefers making the film first and then having Goblin just prepare different tracks, different music for it, and then incorporating those tracks into the movie as opposed to having them actually score the film. Um, so yeah, this was an interesting. I love the there. Like I mentioned him earlier, but it has a very Danny Elfman feel to me. The score for the Dark Half does. It has that ooh, and it's actually, like I said, it's one of the only scores from that time period because I always kind of combine, Monkey Shines, Two Evil Eyes, The Dark Half into that kind of period there, that late 80s, early 90s period for George. And it's the only one that really stood out. Like if you asked me to pick out something from the Monkey Shines or Two Evil Eyes, like musically, like I couldn't do it. Like I would, it's just, it's very in the background, very unnoticeable stuff for me. But the Dark Half always kind of had that vibe where when you hear it, you're kind of like, oh, okay, that's the Dark Half. Like you can kind of pinpoint it. And the big thing that I always loved from the first time that I saw the Dark Half, I loved, as I'm a huge fan of filmmakers who incorporate popular music into a movie and then make me think of that popular song in a completely different light, in a completely different way. Tarantino's really good at this. Rob Zombie's really good at this. And this is one of those occasions where George did that same thing with the use of Elvis Presley's "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" And the way that that's incorporated into this film is so good that now anytime I hear "Are You Lonesome Tonight?" I immediately think of Timothy Hutton walking through the house, and the turkey or the chicken or whatever the hell it is that splits open in the oven, and Amy Madigan falling to pieces. Are you lonesome tonight? It's such an eerie fucking song to begin with, but you think of like Elvis Presley and you're like, oh, it's a sad love song or whatever. But when you watch it in the Dark Half and it's like that's what you incorporate "Are You Lonesome Tonight" with, is that scene in the Dark Half, you're like, oh, okay. And that's what I think of every time I hear that song now, is that scene. So I love the use of the Elvis song in the Dark Half, and the score itself is, like I said, one of those that actually stands out for me from that time period. And Christopher Young, like I said, what a career, and has done. I mean, just go look at his IMDb page, and it's just like a who's who of filmmakers that he's worked with, films that he's worked on throughout the 80s, 90s, 2000s. So yeah, big time stuff. And like I said, this is one of the only occasions throughout George's entire career that he actually had that type of set composed score for something, and I think it's a really really good one. It's definitely not one, because I know this was the original soundtrack was released in '93 on Varese Saraband on CD and cassette back in the day. I don't think it's ever gotten a vinyl release, not in the US at least, maybe overseas. But it's definitely not one that like I would ever like put on while I'm driving or something like that, like some of these. But it's not bad if you want to pop it on, because I think the whole soundtrack is available on YouTube. Actually, you can actually listen to it, and it's not bad if you just kind of want to, if you're working on something at home or doing something and you need some like some background music or something. It's not a bad listen. So number 9 on my list, Christopher Young's score for The Dark Half in '93. And I gotta say, The Dark Half, with the is one of those films that's kind of growing on me more and more. Especially doing the location stuff with Larry back back in February for the Vinegar Syndrome release, and actually spending more time researching and looking into this movie and actually going to the locations and matching shots and stuff endeared me a little more, brought me a little closer to the dark. Because the Dark Half is always one of those that Romero films that I've always just kind of like, I could take it or leave it. But over the past year or so, I've definitely warmed up more and more to it, especially like I said, after talking with Vulo and him mentioning the score and making me go back and reevaluate it and actually kind of listen to it for the first time and realize like, oh yeah, there are some really beautiful aspects of this score that but also haunting at the same time. On top of the Elvis, which I had already was a fan of. So number 9 on my list, Christopher Young's score for The Dark Half. Still just saying Young was great. Hellraiser is a classic. Yeah, and that's another great score. And again, you can it kind of has that same. You can definitely tell it's the same composer that did both of the scores that it has that same type of vibe for sure. It's saying I have to go back and watch The Dark Half. None of that music is catching my mind. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it until Vulo brought it up, and until I started kind of digging into Dark Half a little more over the past year. But like once you hear the song, you immediately like when you hear the music, like when you start track 1, you can immediately, and I mean it's a very big score. It's a very majestic score too. Like there's it definitely it feels like a Hollywood film score. Good or bad, it feels very Hollywood. But yeah, it's one of those when you go back and you actually listen to it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, this is definitely Dark Half, Yeah, exactly, Ed. Like Stuck in the Middle with You and Reservoir Dogs. Yeah. Like I said, Tarantino does it brilliantly. Rob Zombie does that where he takes a popular song and, incorporates it into a film. And like perfect example is in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, Nights in White Satin, when Laurie's going through the hospital in the dream sequence at the beginning. And on every TV, like every now and then she'll pass by a room and on the TV in the background is the video for Nights in White Satin, like over and over again throughout this entire scene. So now every time I hear Nights in White Satin, I just think about that scene. I'm like, oh, that's brilliant. I love that. Steven says, I won't fight you on this one either. The music wasn't bad, but I didn't consider it memorable to me, except for the Elvis stuff because he wasn't in the full film. If Elvis was, then there might be a fight. Okay. Yeah, again, like I said, it was never one that like stood out to me like, oh man, this is a great, I got to listen to this all the time, but like I said, going back, reevaluating The Dark Half over the last year, hearing Vulo talk about it and going back and actually listening to it. And I do have an appreciation for, I don't know, just the grandness of it. It has a very grand feel to it at times. Paul says some pretty great special features on that new Vinegar Syndrome release. I still need to get that. I still haven't picked it up yet. When it went on sale, I was just like, oh yeah, I'll get it. And then eventually like, oh, it's not up anymore. The Vinegar Syndrome site is down. And it's just like, oh fuck. So hopefully they have some left. I don't think they sold out of it. I don't think. But hopefully I'll be able to pick it up because I know Vinegar Syndrome has sales now and then where they'll put different stuff on sale, and hopefully they still have some. I can maybe pick it up half off or something like that. Stegel says Solace in the theater, and I've always liked it. Enjoyed all the King/Romero collaborations. This was one that I think my parents went to see in the theater when I was really young. Because, like I said, 92, 93, I was probably 4 or 5 years old at the time. So I was young, wasn't old enough to go with them. But I think I remember my parents saying they went and saw The Dark Half in the theater. But they didn't know who Romero was or anything like that. But they saw it because it was a Stephen King movie. So I remember when I first started getting into Romero, I remember watching, I think it was The Directors, the episode on Romero, and they started talking about The Dark Half, and I remember my dad saying like, "Oh wow, I didn't know George directed that too. Oh, that's cool." I'm like, yeah, I remember we saw that in the theater back in the day. Excuse me. Steven says, no argument, but Little Green Bag and I Gotcha were also cool. Better overall soundtrack than The Dark Half. Okay. What are we arguing here? Stuck in the Middle with You? Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff in Tarantino's films, music-wise. That's one thing I love about Tarantino's movies, that his use of music, and I've discovered a lot of music through Tarantino's films over the years, so got to give him props for that. So yeah, number 9 on my list, Christopher Young and The Dark Half. All right. Here's a big one. This one might be controversial. So let me prepare for this. It was mentioned earlier, but number 8 on my list, my top 10 favorite Romero soundtracks. And I got to be honest here. Number 8 on my list is John Harrison's score for Creepshow. I know it's an iconic score, iconic soundtrack for sure. It fits the movie perfectly, which George originally, when in making Creepshow, wanted to use library music again. Like he'd worked with Donald Rubinstein for Night Riders, and come off of using the library tracks and stuff for Dawn, which he preferred. So going into Creepshow originally, he was just going to use all library tracks and stuff until I can't remember if it was like at the studio or somebody was like, you gotta have a score for that. You can't just use library tracks. And he reached out to Harrison, or Harrison provided a score and was like, hey, check this out. And George liked it. I can't remember how that story goes, but eventually George ended up going with John Harrison as the movie was being cut. It was the story is George was on one floor of 247. Harrison was on another floor. They would get something cut up there with George and Pat Booba and the editors that worked on Creepshow, and they would send it down to Harrison to do the score for it. Don't get me wrong, it's a great score. It's number 8 on my list just because it's the one great Romero score that I just don't go back to a whole lot. And honestly, if I'm being honest, over time I kind of prefer Rick Wakeman and was it less what's his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue, but Rick Wakeman, his score for Creepshow 2. I kind of prefer that Creepshow 2 theme to the Creepshow theme, the original John Harrison Creepshow theme. I don't know, something about it. I love. I dig that, but I like the Creepshow score. I do. I don't love it, and it's definitely I appreciate the fact that every story in Creepshow, the score for it is completely different depending on the story. Like the score for Something to Tide You Over is completely different than the score that he does for The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill, and that's completely different than the score he does for The Crate, although it all kind of has that same comic book playful feel to it. Waxwork. I have the Waxwork release. The original release came out on Maurice Sarabande back in 83, I believe. 82 on vinyl. Then there was another release in 2003 on CD from La La Land Records. This is the only version that I own. The Maurice Sarabande, the original soundtrack. A little pricey, but I was able to pick. This is pretty pricey too, but I was able to pick this up years ago for a pretty decent price. But again, it's a beautiful thing about Creepshow. It's so colorful. There's so much to look at. Here, I'll try to make a little room here. But it's like the vinyl, the packaging on this, as well as the packaging on like the second sight, or not second sight, but the Scream Factory Blu-ray is one of some of my favorite stuff too. But it's gatefold, kind of has all the liner notes and stuff in here. Various pages of it. It'll move here. Yeah, there we go. It's a badass release. Like, this is one of my favorite of all the Romero Waxwork releases. This may be my favorite. There were different pressings and stuff. Let me see here. You got the little insert card. But the one that I have is like a purple It's the purple release on that. I don't know. I love it. I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of Waxworks artwork and packaging on some of the Romero stuff, one of which we'll talk about here in a little bit. In particular, one we'll talk about here in a little bit. But this is a beautiful release of the Creepshow score. Get that in there all the way. Get it on the back, and good stuff. Good stuff. Like I said, the original release from Varese Saraband I don't own. They'll pop up every now and then on eBay, $60, $70, $80, something like that. But again, like, to me, like, it's the one, like, I acknowledge that it's a great score, and John Harrison, I love John Harrison stuff, but it's the one that I go back to the least, if that makes any sense. It definitely plays out more like a score as opposed to some of the other stuff that we'll get to here on the list. But it's iconic. You can't argue that. It's perfect for what the movie is as a comic book, EC Comics type of movie. It's perfect for that. But for me, it's number 8 on my list, and it's not my favorite John Harrison score, because that's always a debate too. Day of the Dead versus Creepshow, and Day of the Dead will show up later on, obviously. But for me, I prefer Day of the Dead to Creepshow, but there are definitely, like, there's something to tide you over, like that. Boom, boom, boom. That's one of my favorite pieces of music in any Romero film, honestly. And I think it's due to the way that George cut that scene, where it's kind of going back and forth from different things to the beat of the song. I've always dug that. But yes, number 8 on my list is Creepshow, John Harrison. Too low? I think some people may say that might be a little too low, but for me. So Stephen was saying, Nights in White Satin will always be associated with the old Wise Guy TV series. Sadly, can no longer hear it because some of the original copyright bullshit. You can try finding the original old Wise Guy TV series. I've never heard of that. Stezio saying, excellent. My second favorite Romero score. What's your first? I'm sure we'll get to it here eventually. But yeah. I mean, like I said, number 8 on my list. But like, if I'm just chilling, I want to put on a Romero soundtrack while I'm working on something or doing something. Like, typically, I'm not going to put on the Creepshow score, but that's just me. Like I said, that Creepshow 2, it's really grown on me. Not to compare them or say you can like one and not the other, but if I had to compare the two, like, I kind of lean a little more towards the Creepshow 2 aspect of it. It's saying any music that can get Ed Harris to disco dance should be on every top 10 music list. That's right. Who does that song? I can't remember now. Don't let go, or whatever the fuck Ed Harris is doing in that scene. Yeah. I can't remember the name of the group that sings that song now. I should have incorporated that. Maybe that would have knocked it up a notch or two, but I don't know. Film Fury. What's going on, Film Fury? 1972. Les Claypool. Yeah, it definitely has that Les Claypool bass line and that the Creepshow 2 thing. Boom, 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 which is, I fucking love it. Pump that into my veins. Steven says, wow, that's pretty low. I have a feeling some hijinks are coming up fairly soon. Maybe sooner than you think, sir. And Coincidence Control, what's up? Says Rick Wakeman rules. Yes, of course, Rick Wakeman from which we'll talk about Rick Wakeman here. He's attached to another Romero score here coming up here in just a moment. So we're gonna mention Rick Wakeman here in just a moment as well. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, number 8 on my list. This is where I got John Harrison's score for Creepshow. Maybe a little too low for some people, but it's just my opinion, man. Just my opinion. Don't hate me for it. All right. So number 7 on my list. Here you go, Steven. Number 7 on my list. And hey, you might think this is too low. But number 7 for me, got to go with Donald Rubinstein's score for Martin. What do you think, Steven? Is this fair? Is this a fair spot for Rubinstein's Martin? You guys know I love Martin. We've talked about that. It's an ongoing joke now, I think. Because of Steven. But I love Martin. I love the performance from John Amplis, love the setting of Braddock. I love, it's one of my favorite movies. The score for me, again, kind of the same situation, same way that I feel about Rubinstein's score for Bruiser. It's hit or miss, mostly hit for me. Like I think it's very beautiful. It has a very gothic, haunting vibe to a lot of it. But then sometimes, again, and I'm just not a big jazz fan. Like that's just not a style of music I've ever been interested in, or it's just not my thing. Gets a little jazzy for me sometimes. And again, especially when it comes to some of the more suspenseful scenes or this, stuff that's supposed to be a little more energetic and upbeat. It's like if you have to do energetic or upbeat for something, it's like Rubinstein immediately goes to jazz. It's got to be jazzy. So yeah, there's some of that in Martin that I'm just like I could do without that. But for the most part, I would say 80% of the score for Martin that Rubinstein does, I think, is beautiful, haunting, and really fits the movie and the mood of Martin to a T. It's hard for me because, like, I know when I drive through Braddock, when I'm in Pittsburgh, if I go through Braddock, I always put on The Calling from Martin, the sound. I always put that on. And it's got some experimental, like there's different tracks on the soundtrack that are they all kind of have that same I don't know, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of the same piece of music, but done a little more experimentally, a little more melodic, a little more like there's different versions of that always work for me. Yeah, the original version of this came out on vinyl back in 79 from Varice Sarabande, which that was Varice Sarabande. If we can off topic here for a second, but I did want to show you guys this. I brought it out. I think I've shown it when I got it some years back. But just to take a side road and talk about Varice Sarabande for a second. They've been kind of the company that did movie soundtracks for years and years and years. And back right around the time when Martin, Dawn of the Dead, and everything were coming out on soundtrack from Varice Sarabande. I got this, and I have an old order form for Varice Sarabande here, where it has Martin and Dawn at the very top, where you could order the original soundtracks. They also had Phantasm at the time that had just come out, Piranha, the Dunwich Horror, which Piranha was Pino Donaggio, which I didn't even know. Brian May's score for Patrick, Tourist Trap. They were kind of, when it comes to like genre films, exploitation films for soundtracks and stuff, like Varice Sarabande was where it's at. But yeah, I just this is one of my favorite things that I've got. And I didn't even order this on purpose. I ordered one of the paperback novelizations of Dawn of the Dead, and this came with it. Like it was just part of it from back in the day. I was just like, wow, didn't expect that. But yeah, you got the little order slip there back in the day when you could do that. Look at the prices on that. $2.50 for the first LP, $1.50 for each additional. Couldn't beat that. Can you imagine paying that back in the day, and now you look on eBay and you find these on eBay and they're $100, $120 now. It's fucking insane. What an investment. So yeah, but then there's been other releases ever since. There was a Level Green release in '99 on CD. There was a split from Perseverance, which Perseverance is a company that really has released a lot of Rubinstein's stuff over the years. There was a split with music from Pollock. We mentioned earlier the Ed Harris directed Pollock in 2007. And then there's the Ship to Store phonogram release of Martin that came out in 2015. So this is the one. I don't have the Maurice Sarabande of this either because again, they're pretty pricey. But again, something that I definitely need at some point. But I think this is the same version that I gave away last year. I think Bonnie ended up winning it last year for Romero Trivia Night. I had an extra copy, so you get the liner notes here, some right up there from Donald Rubinstein himself. Some words here from John Amplis. Amplis and for me, Donald's score for Martin captures the film's tone of innocence and turmoil. It moves from gothic romance to operatic heights, swirling into a chaotic jazz. That's a good word for it. Filled with tension and soul. It's original and it motivates the story. It fills out the psychological themes and deepens the dramatic action. This score expresses completely what it means when original artists come together to make original art. I agree with that. So yeah, liner notes here written by Donald. Little write up on Donald Rubinstein. So pretty cool little release here. But yeah, I fully agree. I think there is it, and it goes back because I know, because of course Donald is Richard Rubinstein's brother, and I know George met Donald through Richard, and you couldn't add like two different people. Like if you ever read any, like Richard is the business guy. It's kind of like what we talked about with Richard and George. Like Richard is the business-minded guy, and his brother Donald is the artist. You know, the bleeding heart artist of the family. So of course I knew, George and Donald would hit it off immediately. Meeting through Richard, and I'm trying to think. I think that was the first time that George had kind of allowed somebody to actually do a score for his films. Because I mean, he used a lot of library tracks, needle drop stuff up until that point, DeWolf library stuff like that. Of course, Night of the Living Dead. It was the Capital High Q stuff that Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman. So yeah, Martin was like the first one that George actually had a composer to compose an actual score for. And the way that George manipulates the score in Martin as well, I don't think it's talked about enough. The way that George kind of will slow something down or maybe speed it up or add like a reverb or something to it to accentuate aspects of the score for whatever the scene calls for. George was a master doing that. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's one that I love. I love Martin, and again, it's one that I can listen to and immediately envision the film. But yeah, for me, it's obviously going to be in the top 10, but for me, it's number 7. I don't think that it is Donald's definitive masterwork that he did for George. So believe it or not. So there you go, Steven. See, I didn't go too crazy for it. So you should be proud of me. What do you guys think? Stezio saying good score to an excellent movie. I bought your Shops Martin t-shirt in purple, which I'll wear to look at. Yeah, I saw you sent a picture. It looks fucking awesome. And I didn't think about the purple, but when I saw the purple, I was like, fucking Anchor Bay, man. Because that Anchor Bay release of Martin had the purple and the yellow, and I was like, oh, that's immediately what I thought of. I appreciate that though, man. Hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you at Living Dead weekend. I'll be looking for that purple Martin shirt. By God. Jeff saying very atmospheric. Yeah, that's a perfect word for it. It is a very atmospheric score for sure, which is what the film needed. Yeah, Maurice Sarabande, they released a lot of Georgia soundtracks. Yeah, which I think there's a couple of more here that Maurice did. We'll talk about here shortly. Steven says, obviously, Creepshow should be ahead of it. Okay, I'll take that. I could make an argument Dark Half should be ahead of it just for Elvis. It's true. But I'm actually surprised at this. Let's see where the climax is heading. Yeah, well, let's see. And there is the use of that song, the Donald Rubinstein. There's where he's playing guitar and singing, kind of like in Night Riders. In the scene where Mrs. Santini's trying to seduce Martin when he's working on the door. Yeah, I don't know. I love it, but like I said, there are a few aspects to it that I could do without. But other than that, I think it's pretty spot on. Jeff says I have the Dawn soundtrack signed by George and Savini. Very cool. I have the Varese band Dawn of the Dead soundtrack over here. It's up on the wall. I didn't bring it down for this, but I got it framed and put on the wall, and it's signed by Claudio Simonetti. So I got to get the rest of the Goblin guys to sign that at some point. But it's saying Donald's music for Martin is a 6 out of 10 for me. As a kid, my local library had stacks of Varese band CDs. Great stuff. Oh, that's very cool, man. Yeah, they've done tons over the years. But interesting, a 6 out of 10 for you. I can dig that. Again, it's very jazzy. Like there's some very jazzy aspects to it. Like especially the scene where Martin's being chased and he runs into the he runs into the drug dealer, like the drug dealers, and that whole scene turns into the shootout and stuff. Like I feel like that scene could use something a little more than just the jazzy that whole thing. I'm just like, we could use something a little different there, but outside of that, yeah, I thought so, Bonnie. I thought so. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay saying had tons of Varese band vinyl soundtracks from 70s to the 90s. My ex took everything. Oh, that bitch. You can't let that happen, guys. You can't let that happen. Hundreds of albums. I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, I wouldn't. I couldn't imagine. It's funny. The last relationship that I was in, when I decided to leave, she was at work, and I said, "I'm fucking out of here." I packed up my shit, and I got out of there in the cover of night. First thing I packed up was my record collection. I ain't leaving this shit behind. No way. And Steven says jazz can be hard to listen, be a hard listen if you don't enjoy it. If you ever want to dip your toe into jazz pool, I recommend Miles Davis, John Coltrane, or Charlie Parker to start. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like I've dipped my toe in it from here and there, but it's just not for me. Like there a few things here and there that I it's okay, but for the most part, like it's just the same for me. Especially like the more like avant-garde jazz and stuff that Donald kind of, especially when you listen to Donald's would-be score for Dawn of the Dead from Dawn Imagined. A lot of that stuff, it's just like, oh, come on. It's very avant-garde jazz. And that mostly is what the shit that I'm just like, I can't get behind at all. So, but that seems to be the direction that Donald goes with a lot of his jazzier stuff. But hey, to each his own. So yeah, number 7, Martin by Donald Rubinstein. Bet y'all thought that was going to be a little higher, didn't you? This one's going to be controversial because this has already started some debate on the channel. And I've mentioned this is a bit of a hot take. In the past. But we'll see what you guys say about this. Let me get my shit together here. Number 6 on my list, my top 10 Romero Film Soundtracks. Number 10, Dawn of the Dead. And this is not Goblin Zombie. I separated them. This is the library stuff, the DeWolf library stuff from Dawn of the Dead. This is, of course, Because I'm a Man, The Gonk, all the library tracks that George used in lieu of using the Goblin score. Number 6 on my list. And I know that people love this. And as a Dawn of the Dead fan, I love it. I love a lot of it. They're like, as I've mentioned in the past, there are certain tracks that George used in certain parts of the film that I'm just, it's a little too, which I know George loved it, but for me, it was a little too on the nose, a little too corny, maybe. Like, when Peter is rushing up to the helicopter, yeah, like that's a little like okay, or John Wayne, you know. So there are aspects to it. I love a lot of it, but again, like if I'm just putting on a record and I want to listen to some Romero stuff on vinyl, I very rarely will put this on. Outside of I love, you know, because I'm a man. Love that. The gonk, of course, is iconic. Maybe the most synonymous thing associated with Dawn of the Dead, music wise. Um, and again, like there's certain things that work for me, and then there are certain things that just don't. And for me, I've always just been more a fan of the Goblin score, and maybe that has to do with the fact that that's the first soundtrack that I found for Dawn of the Dead. Because when I first found the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack online, or they actually had like a little listening station at my local record store, Sound Shop. You could go and look up a record and listen to it. And first time I looked up the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack, that's the Goblin one is the one that I found, so that's the one that I would listen to all the fucking time. But this one to me, like this was a UK release back in the day. Um, Trunk Records, 2004, I think, when this come out. And I remember picking up 2008 at the Texas Frightmare Weekend. I got the CD. They actually had it at that convention, and I was just like blown away. It's like, oh my god, the Gonk and Cosmogony Part 1. I didn't know what any of these were, but as soon as I put on the CD, like this was all the music from the movie that I loved. I was like, oh my god, like these are all the songs. Like, because of course the Goblin stuff, like most of the Goblin soundtrack is not in the US version. I hadn't seen the Italian cut yet at this point. I don't think. No, yes, I had. I had at this point. But of course, you know, because I'm a man, all that is on this. It's on this collection. And of course, this is all music that was selected from the DeWolf Library, which I think is based in the UK, if I'm not mistaken. Which was just various artists from around that time period. Artists, I have a list here. Artists that include Paul Lamel, Derek Loren, Eric Torin, Pierre Harvey, Jack Tromby, Peter Reno, who does Because I'm a Man, Simon Park, Derek Scott, Herbert Chappell. A list of these composers and musicians that put together this music that was often used at the time for commercials or television. But this is the stuff that George chose to use in his version of Dawn of the Dead. And like I said, I like it. I like it. It's you know, because it's Dawn of the Dead, I like it. But if this was just music that was just out in the ether that I came across, I'd be like, this isn't something that I would listen to on a regular basis. And of course, Waxwork did a 2023 release of this with all the library cues and stuff on it. I know years ago it was compiled. I want to say Chris Stavrakis did this years ago, where he just compiled all the music from the DeWolf stuff and put it in a sequence and order of the the music that you would hear as if you were watching the movie. But yeah, so I know a lot of people. I know the constant debate of what you like better, the Goblin score or the library tracks. George is, you know, he preferred the library tracks, but for me personally, I'm just a Goblin fan in general. So I've always been more keen to that score as opposed to the library stuff. But so number 6 on my list is Dawn of the Dead, the DeWolf library tracks. And I don't suspect that John Vulo is in here tonight, or he'd be giving me some shit right now. So what do you guys think? What are you guys' thoughts on this? Because, like I said, I know people that love the library stuff, hate the Goblin stuff. I think I might be in the minority where I prefer the Goblin soundtrack to the library tracks, but I don't know. Anybody else out there with me on this? Maybe not. Stasia saying surprised. Really? Okay. Yeah, like I said, I thought this one might be a bit of a controversial one, but just for my opinion, my taste, man, it's got to be at number 6. Jeff says, "Because I'm a man, always try." Yeah, yeah, I love that one. That's for sure. That was off of an album, the Electric Banana, I think was the name of the album. So that was actually not a DeWolf track. The non DeWolf stuff, like like the music that plays when they're in the gun shop and they're collecting all the guns and stuff, and it's got the like jungle music or whatever. That's not DeWolf. That's another band. That's like the opening of a song from another band. I can't think of the name of the band off the top of my head, but so yeah, there's a few things that are used that are not from the DeWolf library, but yeah, like I said, for the most part, I have an appreciation for all of it because it does just take me into the movie when I hear it, but it's not something that I'm just like driving down the road listening to most of the time. But yeah, just me. Steven says to me, it's one giant soundtrack that's never been combined. However, so much of this music is classic Dawn of the Dead. I can't in good conscience say this should be so low, but at least it's ahead of Martin. There you go. See, I put it ahead of Martin, so I'm not saying I hate it, but when it comes to preference wise, in terms of the other stuff on this list, the top five, it has to be just outside for me, just outside. It says play that version of Dawn on your turntable on the slowest speed. It sounds like the band Crowbar did the soundtrack. Fun music for a few seconds, but listening in full form is not my bag. Okay, there you go. See, all right, you're with me on this. I've never tried that before, actually. So maybe I'll try that. I'll put it on 45 speed and see what happens. Or no, that kind of speeds it up, doesn't it? So it's interesting. Steven says, I understand it's Inglorious Beginnings, but that doesn't change the masterful way Romero and company used it. Still should be higher ranked in my opinion. Okay, well, I know I'd get some blowback for that, but like I said, but the top five here, the next five, like I can't in good conscience put it ahead of any of these because these are these are albums that I can listen to from front to back and just be enthralled, not just as a Romero fan, but just as a music fan. So I have to put it at number 6. I had to do it. So yeah, number 6 for me. It's Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead. About out of coffee. All right, top 5. Here we go. Number 5, and to me, we've talked about Donald Rubinstein a couple of times already tonight. Of course, with Bruiser, Martin. But for me, my number 5 spot, and to me, this is the definitive masterwork of Donald Rubinstein's career. And of course, I'm talking about Dawn Imagined. No, I'm just kidding. Of course, I'm talking about Night Riders. Number 5 for me, Donald Rubinstein's Night Riders. I think this is one of the most beautifully composed, fluid scores of any Romero film. And I think it's perfect. It doesn't get too jazzy. Like, there's my one big complaint with most of Donald's stuff. It never gets too jazzy. It fits the mood of the film. It has a great grand score. Ba, 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 ba. It's memorable. And all the way through, that music, if you listen to this, in which this just came out in 2023, I believe, from Scareflare Records, the vinyl release here, which is one of the best vinyl releases that a Romero score has gotten in quite some time. But just listening to, like, that's when I truly, like, listening to that, when I put that on the turntable for the first time and listened to the whole soundtrack all the way through, that was the first time that I really appreciated and fallen in love with this score from Donald Rubinstein. It's grand. It's, it's like I said, it's perfect for this film. But the thing that I think truly separates it from a lot of the others on this list, especially 6 through 10 for me, is the song that Donald includes at the final track of this song. I'd Rather Be a Wanderer. It's one of my favorite songs ever. I think it's just a great fucking song that can mean so much, and you can listen to it and get so much out of it. The fact that that song is on this soundtrack just puts it over the top for me. The score in and of itself is great, but ending the album with that song, doesn't get any better. Um, it's a beautiful song, and it's one of those songs that's like, because Donald has talked about before when he was composing the score. Was working on that song at the time, which you can see in the movie. He's like working on the song, um, trying to write it out for King Billy, and he's like, one day I'll play it for you, and of course at the end of the movie, it's perfectly it comes back full circle where he's playing it at Billy's funeral. But when he was writing that song, he said, my only real inspiration in writing that song was I wanted to write a great song, which is a very just like there was no like master like, oh, I had this great inspiration and it just came to me one night, blah blah blah. Um, no, he was just trying to write a great song, and he fucking accomplished it. It is a great song. Um, and of course, there's other stuff on here. Music, the signifying monkey from Oscar Brown. Everybody remembers that one. And then of course they're singing "Going Home" by the Rolling Stones. But speaking of Rick Wakeman, I told you we were going to bring up Rick Wakeman earlier. Originally, the original guy that George wanted to compose the score for Knight Riders was Rick Wakeman, which would have been very interesting at the time. Of course, Rick Wakeman, I guess most people probably know him from Yes, would probably be his most popular mainstream musical endeavor, I guess. But of course, he would go on and do all kinds of movie scores and stuff like that after that. We mentioned Creepshow 2, the one he actually ended up doing, working with George. But yeah, he originally wanted Rick Wakeman until Donald, because Donald was originally just going to be in the movie. He was just we need a guy that plays guitar. We need a music guy that's in this troupe that's there to play the music and stuff. And he reached out to Donald for it, and Donald said, well, can I take a stab at doing the score for this? Can I take a stab at composing the score for it? And George is like, yeah, sure, I'll check it out. I've already kind of got my heart set on Rick Wakeman, but of course I'll always listen to what you got. And Donald composed a little bit of the score, played it for George, and George was like, that's it, like that's the score. So Donald Rubinstein beat out Rick Wakeman to do the fucking score, which I don't know if Rick would have actually done it or not. I don't know if it was actually like presented to him or what would happen with that. But I do know that like Donald Rubinstein just kind of said, well, give me a stab at this and let me see if I can do something with it. And I'm sure it helped, probably save a little bit of money too, having Donald do it and also be in the movie, which it worked out perfectly, having Donald do the song and that being included on the soundtrack as well. So I don't know. I love it. To me, of course, originally came out on CD back in the day from Perseverance. Had the CD as well. But for me, like I said, this is Donald Rubinstein's masterwork. This is his masterpiece of a score. I love Martin, and I appreciate Bruiser in pieces and in parts. And of course, Donald Rubinstein would go on and do, the Tales from the Dark Side theme and stuff like that. So he's a great musician, done great stuff. But for me, Knight Riders is his masterpiece, in my humble opinion. So number 5 on my list is Donald Rubinstein's Knight Riders. So what do you guys think about that one? You with me on that one, or nah? What do you guys think? Jeffson, the music in the gun shop scene in the original 1978 film Dawn of the Dead is stock music from the DeWolf Library composed by Herbert Chappell. I don't think that's true. I can't remember that, but because I remember this was something that everybody always assumed, but it's actually an intro to a song from a certain band from the 70s, and I can't, because I think Eric Kent, I want to say, figured this out a few years back. I'll have to look that up at some point. But yeah, I can't think of the name of the band or who it was. But yeah, I think they figured that out at some point, that it wasn't actually DeWolf from the DeWolf Library. It's actually an intro from some band. So I don't know. Stadio says that's fair. Now let's talk about that Knight Riders poster as the prize for the contest you talked about. Oh, do you guys want the Knights on Hot Stoves German poster or whatever that I got? You can't have the one sheet back there. I won that. I don't care what you say, Matt. I won that fair and square on eBay. And I can't give up the Knights on Hot Stoves poster either. So, Paul said, Michael, do you have the yellow or the blue version? I have the blue, the Brother Blue pressing, which I think is the more rare of the two. So I remember as soon as it's been on sale, I was able to pick one. I think it's pretty limited, if I'm not mistaken. But this release also has one of the coolest things. It's got like a little makeshift, not a makeshift, but a pretend flyer. You know, like this is what they would have been putting up around the town to let people know that they were coming to town for the show, and program of events, got jousting, archery, sword fighting. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool little read there. And of course, down there at the bottom, of course, you got to have the Knight Rider himself, Morgan, the Black Knight, old Tom Savini. Meet the Black Knight. Get your picture taken with Morgan, our bravest stuntman and deadliest knight in the troop. Saturday only, 4 to 5 p.m. in front of the grandstands. I love that. I love little shit like this, especially. Like I said, this is one of the best in terms of vinyl releases. One of the best releases of any Romero soundtrack that I've seen. So if you come across one, I highly recommend picking it up. But yeah, this is the Brother Blue edition, and the yellow, I think, what was the name of that one? The Fighter Yield edition. Either way, you can't go wrong with it. It's just the color of the actual record. It says not my number one overall, but my number one from the aspect of playing it from start to finish. And Donald's sound could have been a hit if it was ever truly released. Yeah, like I said, man, it's such a grand. Like I said, it's Rubinstein's masterpiece to me. Like front to back, like it's an amazing work of art by him. So it's my favorite Rubinstein, obviously. Don't worry, I did not include Dawn Imagined in this, although I thought about it. just to see what Stephen would say. Oh, you meant the song. Yeah, I agree with that, man. I'd Rather Be a Wanderer would have been a hit, I think, if it would have gotten some radio play. Steven says this is kind of tough because Knight Riders is kind of a world of its own. It really works for the movie, but other than watching the film, I don't think there's much I would listen to outside of it. Not even the song, man. Not even I'd Rather Be a Wanderer. Coincidence Control says The Six Wives of Henry VIII is a fantastic album by Rick Wakeman. I recommend that one. There you go. Some Rick Wakeman love tonight. Who would have guessed? Who would have thunk it? Steven says, except for the Stones song, perhaps. Yeah, there you go. It's got Rolling Stones in there. You know, come on now. We're going home. It says, fun fact, Rick was the unofficial fifth member of Black Sabbath in their Bloody Sabbath era. Oh, really? I didn't know that. There we go. From our resident Sabbath expert there, Mr. Ed Trader, Music and Entertainment. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. Steven says, I want the Dawn of the Dead poster you ranked beneath the bootleg Martin art. No! God damn it, no. I got to get that bootleg Martin art, by the way. I got to get the poster of that. I got to get the VHS of that. Coincidence Control, very cool. Did not know that. Great Sabbath album as well. Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's pretty fucking cool. I don't know a lot about Rick Wakeman. I know him mostly from Yes. But and of course Creepshow 2, but that's pretty badass. I didn't know that. I love Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. That's one of my favorite Sabbath albums. One of my favorite Sabbath songs. Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I'm just gonna sit here and sing all night. You guys are gonna have to just deal with it. All right. So yeah, number 5, Donald Rubinstein's Night Riders. Top 4. We're getting down to the nitty gritty here. This is one that, again, for music that I would like just put on and listen to for the fun of it, maybe not so much, but it's so synonymous with this movie and the story behind it and the way that it was cultivated and used in the movie, and kind of the effect that it has on the atmosphere of the movie, which I don't think, you know, I don't know if it was expected or George went for this, but it's so funny. Like very rarely can you take what are basically library tracks and all of a sudden it becomes so synonymous with the movie that those tracks almost just become the actual score for this movie. Like when you hear the music, which this music had been used in movies and stuff before Night of the Living Dead, but after Night of the Living Dead, from there on out, like that was the music from Night of the Living Dead. So yes, number 4 on my list is Night of the Living Dead, and the Capital High Q scores that were picked out by Carl Hardman and Marilyn Eastman. The music itself was picked out by Carl Hardman, Marilyn Eastman. They used it. They enhanced it with different things here and there, like because this music was just stuff that was pretty much almost a decade old at the time. Like a lot of the music in and of itself sounds very like 50s sci-fi in a way. And what Hardman and Eastman did with the music was basically they added some I don't know, some little tinges of some like synth and kind of warped them a little bit to kind of change them up a little bit. And then George, cut it into the film, incorporated it the way that he did. And it works so well in a weird way because, like I said, the music in and of itself sounds very sci-fi to me. Because a lot of the stuff was used for sci-fi films. Like there was, I think the film in particular that I was thinking of the other day was it's the Teenager from Outer Space, Teenager from Mars, something like that from the 50s that used a lot of the same music. And you watch it in that movie and it's like that's the type of music that's supposed to be in a film like that from like a decade before, but now you hear it and you're like, oh, they're using the Night of the Living Dead music. I don't know, it's great. So yeah, the music was used or selected by Carl Hardman, Marilyn Eastman from the Capitol High Q collection, which was again kind of like the DeWolf stuff. It's just a collection of artists. I wrote some of them down here: William Luce, Spencer Moore, John Steely, George Hormel, Jack Cookerly, Harry Bluestone, Emil Kadkin, I think is how you pronounce that. Ivy Glindeman, Philip Green, like just a collection of these composers and musicians that just created this music just to have to be used just to have on standby. Like I said, it's just stuff on standby that they could use in commercials or whatnot. Picked out by Carl and Meryl, which they did an amazing job picking this music out because it worked so well for the movie. And the thing about the music that it's so it fits the movie so well now looking back on it, but at the time, like it was a little weird. Like when you hear that the opening notes of the whole opening with the car driving up through the cemetery and stuff, like it's so eerie, but at the same time, it has such a sci-fi feel to it that it almost, which I guess maybe if you're looking at it, the whole Venus probe thing with the movie, maybe you can correlate some of the sci-fi aspects into that. But a lot of the music in and of itself sounds very sci-fi, but the way that George used it and where he put it in the film and how he incorporated it made it more, I don't know. Like I said, it's a little more experimental. I don't know. It works for whatever. And it's like this weird, almost outdated music at the time for 68. in this black and white movie set in a contemporary setting of a farmhouse, where there were, people on TV and the posse and stuff, but there's this music that sounds very space age. I don't know. It gives Night of the Living Dead this very surreal, nightmarish feel that, like I said, I don't know if George intended or if he was just like, oh, this musical work. But George had such a great ear for music and how to incorporate, especially needle drop library music into his films and kind of making that music his in a weird way. It's like when you hear the gonk now, it's Dawn of the Dead. You hear, the opening cemetery themed to Night of the Living Dead. Oh, that's the Night of the Living Dead score. Like to most people now, that is the Night of the Living Dead score. I've heard from some people in the past that didn't know that this was just library music. That was they thought it was an actual score made for the film because it was used so well and it becomes so synonymous with Night of the Living Dead that they thought it was music that was actually made for the film. So the credit, like the hats off, go out not just George and the way that it was incorporated, but Carl Hardman, Marilyn Eastman, and picking those specific tracks from, like, because I mean when the Capitol Haiku catalog was like hundreds and hundreds of just little bits and pieces of music that they had to choose from, and they picked out what was what and what they wanted to use, and George used it in the way that George does. And yeah, I mean, it was it's iconic now. Like I said, it's crazy for needle drop music to be iconic with a film like that. Usually it's just kind of like background stuff if it's used incorrectly, but yeah, it got a Varice Sarabande release in '82 on vinyl. It was re-released on Waxwork Records, the one that I have here, which is again one of my. I was talking about the Creep Show release being probably my favorite Romero release of a Romero soundtrack, but this is right up there with it. I mean, this is beautiful. Like this is what you want in like a Night of the Living Dead artwork with the gatefold there, and comes with a little insert, little write up in here. Gary Striner. Very, very cool. And I think I have the green. Ooh. So yeah, I mean it's great, great release from Waxwork from 2018, I think I said. But it's also had a few other releases. I mean, there was a band called Morricone Youth that did like a tribute album that it's more like not a punk rock version, but did their own take on the music and put it out on CD some years back. I think I had it written down here. What year did that come out? The Morricone Youth, 2016. And then there was a 2010 CD release that Jim Serenella, I think, helped compile called "They Won't Stay Dead," which incorporated all those tracks. So yeah, there's multiple different releases of that out there. But it's so funny to me that like these library tracks are now so synonymous with Night of the Living Dead that it's just the Night of the Living Dead score at this point. So yeah, I mean, I love it. And again, it's music that's like outside of it being synonymous with Night of the Living Dead, probably not music that I would listen to very often, because like I said, it does feel like I said, even when Night of the Living Dead came out, it felt dated a little bit, but it works. It gave Night its own unique dreamlike feel. I don't know how to describe it. But yeah, I love it. I'm a huge fan of it. And I think the story behind it is even more interesting than the actual music itself and the way that it was used and all that. So yeah, number 4 on my list is The Night of the Living Dead. What do you guys think about that one? Steven says, how about some Holy Diver? Holy Diver, you've been gone too long in the midnight sea. That was the first album I ever bought on vinyl, actually, was Dio's Holy Diver. I found it at a yard sale for like 50 cents. That and Queen's News of the World. First 2 albums I ever owned on vinyl. So there you go. Fun fact for tonight. Steve says my number one favorite Romero score. There you go. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't argue with it. It's just yeah, it's also, I don't know, it's like it's like the whole thing when you listen to the album all the way through, every track you can visualize the movie. Which is, it's so strange that you could do that with a compilation. Pretty much, it's basically a compilation album of just a bunch of different stuff, but I mean, it has a cohesive feel to it, so much so that people think that there was an actual composer that did the score, so now it's just known as the Night of the Living Dead score. It's pretty incredible. Steven says that's intriguing. You're celebrating the genius use of library tracks for Night, but it's number 6 for Dawn. At least it's ranked ahead of Martin. Yeah, I mean, I think the stuff for Dawn is so, again, what I just said, like the Night of the Living Dead stuff, the way that the tracks that were used, it felt so cohesive that it almost works as a score, like a composed score. It doesn't feel like the Dawn tracks to me are a little all over the place. Like some feel, like Cosmogony feels very Dawn. But then again, you get to, the ba 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 ba, some like, and then it's like, okay, that's obviously, it feels like it was taken from a John Wayne movie and put in the movie as almost a tongue in cheek in a way. So Dawn's stuff, the selections for Dawn, which I'm not putting George down. I mean, it's his movie, it's his taste and stuff, but some of them feel out of whack and they don't feel like a cohesive thing as much as Night. Like like Night all the way through, like everything in Night feels like, a cohesive score almost. So I guess that's my way of defending that, Stephen. But yes, it is ahead of Martin. So, Stadio says I have a pretty big collection of old movies, and I love it when a cue comes up from Night of the Living Dead. Yeah, it was used in a number of different movies before Night of the Living Dead. Like I said, mostly stuff from the early '60s, late '50s, sci-fi, B-movie type stuff. But yeah, when Night of the Living Dead rolled around, it just was just like, nope, that's ours. Like that's Night of the Living Dead now. That's it, Paul. Teenagers from Outer Space definitely uses a lot of that same score. Yep. Very much so. Steven says, how weird is it to watch some strange foreign film and then hear something like Planet of the Apes music start playing? Always a strange experience. Yeah, they foreign films do that a lot. Specifically, like the Japanese. There's a Japanese version of Dawn of the Dead that uses mostly. It still uses Goblin tracks, but it's mostly stuff from Suspiria, which is weird to hear. I don't know. I saw it on YouTube a while back, so I think it's still on there. But yeah, it's kind of weird to hear the Japanese version, and then all of a sudden you start hearing like Witch from Suspiria, and you're like, oh, that's a weird combination there. It says the show iZombie used music from Night as they called their zombies Romeros, with Romero being of Cuban descent. That might be why he had such a good feel for music. That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, George was definitely, which is, I've always wanted to know, like, what were some of George's favorite bands, musicians, just because of his unique, I don't know, selection process or whatnot for a lot of the library stuff that he used over the years. So yeah, I've always wanted to know more about that from people who actually like were close to him and knew, like, oh, when George is driving to the post office, like, what is he listening to? That sort of thing. Steven says, but it works for Dawn. I guess we'll just agree to disagree. But it works for Dawn. Well, I mean, yeah, it does. I mean, it works for it. However, but look, for my personal goddamn taste, all right, I like I like the Night score better than the library tracks in Dawn. Fight me. I love you, Steven. I love you. Keep me straight. Orion Trips. Hey, what's up, man? Evan, everybody check out great conversation I had with Evan a few weeks back. Just popped in. How's it going? Going well, man. Just found out tonight that it was kind of a bummer news finding out about Rob Reiner and all that. I don't know if you heard about that, but yeah, outside of that, we've had a good time tonight talking about some Romero soundtracks and scores and debating with Steven on the merits of my list. But make your own list, Steven. I want to see your damn list. But But yeah, good to see you in here, man. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, number 4 on my list, Night of the Living Dead. We'll leave it at that. All right, top 3. Anybody want to guess what the top 3 are? One Steven's gonna love, but we'll wait and get there in just a second. This is number 3 on my list. Almost made it to number 1. I was so close. When I originally wrote this list, this was my number 1. And then I was reminded of something. And I said, I can't in good conscience put this at number 1 on my list. But the rest of the score may be my favorite if it wasn't for a couple of tracks on this. So at number 3 on my list is John Harrison's score for Day of the Dead. And like I said, this was almost number 1. Like when I first wrote this list, I was like, okay, Day of the Dead, probably number 1 for me. But then I was reminded of goddamn Sputsy, Sparacino, and Modern Man, and the fucking Take Me to the World. That just ain't, it's just so corny. It's so cheesy to me. Like, I hate those songs. Tomorrow, what is it? Tomorrow Never Comes, or whatever the hell that song is, and Take Me to the World Inside Your Eyes. Like, if it wasn't for those two, like if this album did not have those 2 songs on it, this would probably be my number 1. But those 2 songs bring it down so much to me that I have to put it at number 3, and I have to put the top 2 ahead of it. Because I don't have that cringe moment when I'm listening to this album and it's pulsating and it's fucking John Harrison kicking ass the only way John Harrison can. And honestly, when I think of like a zombie theme or zombie music, I think of this more so than Dawn of the Dead, more so than the Goblins score. I think of this. I think of boom, 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 boom. That part, the fucking, I love it. The Caribbean hints of Caribbean score that John Harrison throws in there, which Orion Evan on his video points out brilliantly, like the way that that's used and incorporated into that score to kind of, it's almost like this. When John in the movie is talking about this, oh, let's go to an island, let's get out of here. Like there's better things out there, and that Caribbean score kind of comes in, like it's almost like telling you, like, oh, it's letting you know, it's foreshadowing, like, oh, they're going to an island type of thing. I love it, and it's the one score that you can just listen to from start to finish, and it feels like, cinematic. Like it tells the story of the movie. The score itself tells the story of the movie. You get the little nod to the gonk that Harrison throws in there. I love the score, and I know Vulo's not a big fan of it. Matt's a big fan of it. It's a controversial one, but I love the score. I'm a big fan of the Day of the Dead score. But if it wasn't for those 2 goddamn songs that are thrown in on the end of it, for I don't know why, I don't know what reason, Sputsy and Delilah are the 2 there, and the band, the band itself is called Modern Man, and they were like just a local band in Pittsburgh from like 84 through the early 90s. I want to say 91, I think, is when they were just a local band. They used to be like a cover band before that. I don't know why that was incorporated. I don't know if that was a George call or if that was a John Harrison call or a producer call, or because that just, to me, those songs seem like it seems like a producer, maybe Salah Hassanan or somebody was like, hey, we're gonna, because this came out on Saturn Records in '85, and they probably said, oh, we need a single, because the music business, that's usually where they go. It's like, oh, we need a single, something that the radio can play, that we can promote this album, and maybe it was thrown in because that, I don't know. I'm pretty sure Harrison and the Modern Man band or whatever probably knew each other, and they were aware of each other, and that's probably why it was included. But it didn't need it. Like, even if it was just the music at the end, of Day of the Dead. Like when Day of the Dead ends and it goes to the credits and it's just doom 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 doom. If it's just the music, that's fine. It's a fine way to go out. But as soon as that motherfucker comes on with "Holding You," it's like, oh god, what is this? Why is this here for such a dark movie where people are being torn apart and are calling each other fucking eggheads and shit throughout the whole movie and are screaming? It's just such a hostile and fucking dark movie, and it ends with this like, I don't even know, like fucking what would you call it? Like soul music, I guess. I don't know what you would even call it. 80s soul music or something. I don't know, but it just kills me every single fucking time. And another thing that kills me about the Day of the Dead score, and I was talking, we were to mention, we've shown two really great waxwork releases in terms of the artwork and the presentation. Folks, this is not one of them. This is one of the ugliest, worst looking covers that they could have come out with for Day of the Dead, in my opinion. The record itself is cool. Like, it's got the, the yellow variant here, it's waxwork. They do their releases up great. But when you see what they did with Creepshow and what they did with Night of the Living Dead and the Creepshow 2, they did a Creepshow 2 release, which looks amazing. When you see what they do with that, and then you get this for Day of the Dead, this fucking mummy or old man or whatever the hell it is on the front with this weird thing. And again, it goes back to, why do they always make Day of the Dead look like a fucking mummy movie? I don't get it. The gatefold, I mean, it looks cool. Okay, oh, it's Day of the Dead. Like, if this didn't say Day of the Dead and you just picked this up, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, is this, the mummy or something? You don't know. You wouldn't know that it was Day of the Dead until you opened the gatefold and actually saw shit from Day of the Dead. So I had to take off a point for just the waxwork release, if nothing else. Now, of course, I do have the Saturn Records release back here on my wall, signed by John Harrison. Again, didn't want to get that down off the wall. But so I had to pull this out just to bitch about it for a second, because waxwork, you can do better than this, guys. Come on. But other than that, so yeah, I love the actual score itself. I think it's John Harrison's best. Like I said, I do prefer it to Creepshow, but for me, those fucking Modern Man songs. Spudsy, how dare you? Why would you do that? What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about that? Number 3 on my list, Day of the Dead. Thanks, Steven. It's the furry's job to bite you, however. That's okay. I'm good on that. I haven't had my rabies shot this year. Stezio says my number 3 also. Good choice. All right. So me and Stezio are right there together. Ed's saying John was smoking some of that good Savini weed when he included The World Inside Your Eyes. Other than that, Day is my number 1 overall. Like I said, man, it was this close. Like, I tune those songs out so they don't, when I think of the Day of the Dead score, I don't think of those songs. But if I'm doing an honest assessment of the soundtracks as a whole, if I'm gonna include, the use of Elvis Presley and The Dark Half and the Misfits and Bruiser and all, if I'm all encompassing, I have to include those 2 songs. And man, it weighed it down for me to the point where I was like, I can't honestly put this at number 1. So it's got to be number 3 for me. Steven says, I don't hate today's score. The opening music is very good. The rest of it is okay, but not over Dawn. No issues with it at number 3. Still ahead of Martin. That's right. Spoiler alert, the rest of these are ahead of Martin. Where are they? Jeff says, I love the Day soundtrack. I just get paid to fly to early bird, and I've been doing that job just fine. Evan says, I remember putting Day of the Dead in my DVD player and hearing the main menu music for the first time and getting this indescribable surge of excitement. It's so invigorating. I agree. You're talking about the Anchor Bay DVD back in the day, and it's Escape Invasion Escape. Yeah, it's a fucking banger, as the kids say. as you could say. Um, there we go. It says they have a name for that kind of music. It's called crap, but it's said to be. Yeah, there we go. I agree with that. When when me and my fiance first met, we shared a Spotify playlist when we first met because we lived in separate towns, and so to share music, we would just add stuff to the Spotify all the time. And one time, as a joke, I added, "The World Inside Your Eyes," and I remember getting the text, "What the fuck is this?" Just like no, don't worry about it. It says that cover art is very 60s European mod vibe. What the fuck? Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what they were thinking with that. They had to have been running out of budget or something for that. But and Steven says that Day record cover is a little too esoteric for my taste. Bub is done by Monet. Is that supposed to be Bub? I guess, because that does not look like Bub at all. Like it literally looks like the Mummy in Lot 249 from Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, more than it does Bub. But yeah, I've never been a fan of that artwork. The album itself, I mean, it's you can't beat it. It's a double disc or whatever, double vinyl set. But yeah, points off for that fucking artwork. Evan says, I actually don't remember the Modern Man songs. Is at the end in the end credits only? Yeah, at the very end of the credits, man. If you stick with the credits long enough, about halfway through, guys start singing, and it's just like, Lord of mercy. And yeah, if you actually have the soundtrack, it's the last two tracks on the album after you've listened to the whole score, and you're just like, fucking yeah, this is right, this is killer. Then you get to those last two songs, and it's just like, Jesus. It is a banger for sure. Which Time Vision 1019 on YouTube does some great Romero covers. He does a cover of that. It's actually like as good, if not better, than Harrison's version, in my opinion. It looks more like Bub's left nut at this point than it does Bub. Good call. So yeah, I love it. I love John. To me, it's John Harrison's best. If it wasn't for those two songs, it would be my number one. But I couldn't do it. I had to take off points for those two atrocious fucking songs. But so yeah, number 3, Day of the Dead by John Harrison. And now we get to the last two. The final two on my list. And this could be interesting. But number 2 on my list, you guys know how I feel about the DeWolf stuff. But at this point in time, number 2, it's Goblins score for Zombie. Iconic all the way through. Again, another album that I can listen to front to back. When I first discovered this album when I was young and never heard Dawn, like to me, Dawn of the Dead was such a mystery in so many ways, especially in the early 2000s before the internet and everything. And the remake comes out and it has this resurgence. And when I found this soundtrack for the first time, I was expecting to hear all the music that's included on the Trunk Records release, the DeWolf library cues. And then I hear this, and it's like got 3 or 4 songs that I recognize, and the rest of the music, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, I just thought it was like extra shit that they threw in there because they didn't, they didn't have anything else. But over time, and actually after seeing Argento's cut of the movie and how he incorporated the music into it, which some of the music works, some of it doesn't for me, but that's probably, and I've had this conversation before, it's probably just because I am from the US and I grew up on George's cut, or people overseas that grew up on Argento's cut probably associate that music more with Dawn of the Dead than the library stuff, and prefer it to the library stuff. So over time, just being a huge Dawn of the Dead fan, I grew to love that music, all the tracks, Zaratozome or whatever. I love the use of that when the bikers break in. Um, and of course, this just has the original 9 or 10 tracks on it. There's been expanded versions that have come out with all the behind the scene, not behind the scenes, but um, the alternate takes of like the Dawn of the Dead theme, and it has boom 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 doop, 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 which a lot of that stuff I actually prefer to the tracks that actually ended up on this album. Um, but again, me and Matt, when we had the roundtable hot takes discussion, Matt brought up he wasn't a big fan of the Goblin stuff from Dawn of the Dead. He isn't a big fan of Goblin in general. I'm a huge fan of Goblin. Um, I've grown to just love the band itself, and not even just their their movie scores and movie soundtrack stuff, just their albums in general. Um, and part of that was growing to love this album, and loving the music that's included on it that's not in the version of Dawn of the Dead that I grew up on. The music and the way that we talked about it a little bit, but the way that George incorporated the Goblin stuff in his versions works really well. Because I do think the wall-to-wall Goblin and Argento stuff is so off-putting, especially to somebody who didn't grow up with that, didn't first discover the movie with that score, that it's almost like, oh, this isn't right. It just doesn't feel right in a lot of it. And the overuse of fucking zombie in it is goes without saying. But the way that George incorporated it into his version and the way that it's used, it gave it, especially when I first discovered Dawn of the Dead, it gave that other, again, the movie was such a mystery to me the first time I saw it, in the first few years of where I first fell in love with that movie, that the music in and of itself, it just didn't feel like your typical horror score. It didn't feel like your typical movie score in general. It felt like something very other, like it didn't feel like it was from not just this country, but this planet almost. Like when you hear, it's like what instrument is that? Like when you're young and you don't know, you're just like, what? That's not an instrument that I can pinpoint. Like, what is going on here? So I think without the Goblin stuff, even as much as George incorporated into the US version, it's not it just wouldn't be the same. Like if Dawn of the Dead was all just the library stuff, I don't think it works quite as well. And I don't know. I just I love this album. I love Goblin. To me, and I have like 1,000 different not literally, but many different versions of this. The Demonia stuff, the Claudio Simonetti's Goblin releases, the live performances of this I have on vinyl. I've just become so I don't know, obsessed I guess is the word, with not just the movie but the music and the soundtrack in and of itself, that to me this is the music that I can just put on while I'm driving around. Like if I'm in the mood to listen to the Dawn of the Dead soundtrack today, so I'll throw on Goblin Zombie. But I mean, I don't know what else to really say about it. It's iconic at this point. It's one of the all-time classic horror scores, with an all-time classic horror theme for Dawn of the Dead. Like I said, I kind of prefer the alternate takes, like the where it's got the slow build with the bass drum, boom, 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 boom. I kind of prefer that version. But anyway, number 2 on my list is Goblins Zombie, which I know Matt's not going to be happy about. I think he kind of figured. He kind of knew. Jeff, hell to the yeah. There we go. Did I actually put the Crazies at number 1? Heaven help us. Everybody loves Beverly Brummers. Come on now. Maybe I did. Stezio says, okay, I prefer the original or the theatrical mix with the library over the Argento version, but hey, it's your world and we're just visiting it, right, Steven? That's right, Steven. Stesio's got the right intent. I'm with you on that when it comes to the films and the way that the music's used in the film, like the way that George incorporated the Goblin stuff with the library stuff. I do prefer that, like I said, as opposed to just the wall to wall Goblin that Argento's film is. Um, but as a soundtrack, as something that I would put on the turntable and listen to all the way through, and just vibe with track after track, even like the slower, like the melodic piano music and stuff like that's included in this. Like I think it's just beautiful. Like I love it. So just as an album in and of itself, as a standalone work of art, I love this album. So I'm kind of with you on that. Like I do prefer the theatrical mix with the library stuff over the Argento version. So we're not on different pages on that aspect. But just as a standalone release, as a standalone score soundtrack, like to me, it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat Goblin. Steven says, I said before, to me, there are really just one soundtrack that's never officially been combined with would be my number one overall. Also wrote this previously that the combination of both just work. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it just depends on what version of the movie you grew up with, what version of the movie you first discovered. Because, like I said, I've heard from other hardcore Dawn of the Dead fans from overseas that they look at the US versions the way that we look at the Argento cut, where they hear the library tracks and they're just like, oh, that doesn't sound right. What is that? Like, why would you use that? Because they first discovered Zombie as opposed to the US version of Dawn of the Dead. So, yeah, I get it. Like I said, I think that plays a lot into it. And like I said, I prefer the theatrical, the mix, the way that George incorporates it, as opposed to just laying it on top of the action and just letting the track play out the way that Argento does. But the music in and of itself, I prefer it over the library tracks in and of themselves, if that makes any sense. Ed says the library tracks in the US is a music score, while Goblin's version is more of soundtrack songs. That's just how I have them in my mind. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Yes, the library tracks definitely play more like just like an actual movie score as opposed to Goblin stuff. But I think that's the thing that separates Dawn of the Dead in a lot of ways, is that it has that Goblin stuff in it, and it didn't sound, especially at the time, didn't sound like anything else that anybody in the US had ever seen before. Like at the time, you had The Exorcist, which had a sort of Goblin feel to it, but not really. But I think for American audiences, hearing Goblin, and I felt that way watching it in the theaters now. Like when I would go to the theater to see Dawn of the Dead on some of the rerun, the re-releases that they've done here recently, like sitting in a theater full of people that you can kind of pinpoint, like, oh, they've never seen this movie before. Like when the Goblin stuff comes on, you can kind of get that vibe where it's just like it's jarring for the untrained ear, I would say. But I think that's also, again, like we were talking about earlier, with all the little brush strokes that make Dawn of the Dead the work of art that it is, in any film or song, album, whatever. All, like, if it's missing a certain component, I just don't think it would be the same. And I think Goblin is one of those big puzzle pieces, as we were saying earlier. Steven said, hey, the whole point of this is to express our opinions, especially when Alpha is wrong. Yeah, who's going to keep me in check here? But all right. So number 2, it's Goblin, Zombie. Number 1, I might have to just jump off here real quick and get the hell out of Dodge before Steven blows his top. But again, when I was compiling this list, I'm thinking of it in terms of like, what album or what music am I most inclined to just listen to? Like, what can I listen to front to back, start to finish, and every track? It's like anytime I listen to any album, like my all-time favorite albums, it has to be great from start to finish. One track leads into another, and there's nothing skippable on it. Everything is fucking on point. And this album is one that I discovered not long ago. And it's basically a greatest hits album of a band that I love. So I have to be honest here. If I'm picking an album to listen to, just out of random, a Romero album, a score, soundtrack, whatever you want to call it, this is the one that 9 times out of 10 I'm going to go to now, and have over the past year and a half, 2 years or so, ever since I first discovered it, because I've never even seen the movie until then. But number 1 on my list of my all-time favorite Romero soundtracks, Vampire from Goblin. Just for you, Steven. Martin is at number 1 in some form or fashion. Now, the movie in itself, so basically what Vampire is, or Vampire, whatever you want to call it. Basically what Vampire is, when Dawn of the Dead came out in Italy and it was a major success, the Italians ended up purchasing the rights for Martin to distribute Martin overseas in Italy as well, to bank off the success of Dawn of the Dead over there. And so they bought Martin, and just like with Dawn of the Dead, recut it, added a completely different score, completely different soundtrack to it, which would be Goblin, and released it as Vampire. Now, the movie in itself, it's a mess. It's a mess, I'll say. It's interesting to watch because you're watching one of your favorite movies for the first time, almost, it feels like. But the music, the selection of the music that's included on this fucking soundtrack is so fucking good. Every song is a banger, as they say. To me, it's some of Goblin's best music. You get everything on this. It hits every note for me. There's fucking drum solos going on. There's the slow, dark, haunting aspects of it. But then at the same time, because basically what they did was they took music from a couple of albums that weren't soundtrack albums that Goblin had done prior to this, from the albums Roller and The Fantastic Voyage of a Bug Named Mark, or whatever the hell that album was called, which was like a concept album that Goblin had done just before Dawn of the Dead, I believe. And pretty much took the music and picked different tracks from those albums and used it as the soundtrack for Vampire. And from track 1, when you get the fucking keyboard intro and it goes into this fucking banging, groovy fucking song, and then it goes to something else, and it's like it's such a fantastic collection of genres and vibes and feels to it that it's just like all the way through I can play it start to finish, and it's just like, oh, it doesn't last long enough. Like I said, the movie itself, the cut is pretty bad. That's why it's pretty hard to find. Like, it's not out there widely available. It's not something that anybody really champions. But the soundtrack, the collection of Goblin songs that are used for the soundtrack on this are, to me, it's my favorite. It's one of my favorite albums at this point. I put it on and I listen to it at least once a month. Like, if I like, one of my go-to albums ever since finding it is Vampire by Goblin. It also had never before released Strange Terminal and Royal Road, which were 2 songs that were written by Aldo Salvi. I have written here. Don't know who that is, but yeah, I mean, it's a great collection. Like I said, it's basically a greatest hits album from Goblin, and that's going to be hard to beat. But this release came out not too long ago. It's again gatefold. It's got a very shiny, none more black type cover. R.I.P. Rob Reiner. There's the back of it there. And this was put out by Cinevox, who did a lot of the did most of the Goblin releases. You know, Suspiria, Zombie, um, Deep Red, a lot of that stuff over there. Cinevox did. So I don't know. I love it. Like I said, Day of the Dead. When I first started to compile this list, Day of the Dead was number one. But if I'm being honest, of what I love and listen to the most now, and just track after track, I'm just exhilarated by. Like it's hard to beat this for me at this point. Just as a big Goblin fan. Now, if you're not a big Goblin fan of the band itself, you may not dig it quite as much. But again, like there's just a little bit of everything on this. Um, every genre, every vibe, every feel, and the way that it's incorporated into that cut. Like there are certain aspects that really work. It's in a completely different vibe than Rubinstein's score. It's completely different. Um, and I think that was the whole point. It's kind of the same way that Argento took Dawn of the Dead and recut it and added the music and kind of made it more friendly for foreign audiences. Kind of did the same thing for Vampire, where he made it less like melodramatic and moody and atmospheric, less atmospheric, more of a straight ahead vampire movie with a rockin' goblin soundtrack over the top. And I actually saw somebody comment on one of the videos where we were talking about this. Somebody commented on it the other day and said they actually preferred the Vampire cut to Martin because to them it made more sense. The cut it made more sense, and the music worked better than the Rubinstein score. So I was like, wow, okay, that's I've never heard that take before, but hey, I'm much respect for it. So yeah, if you haven't seen the cut, check it out. It's like watching Martin on fucking acid or something. But the music in and of itself, just as music alone, is fucking incredible. So yes, my number one favorite Romero soundtrack, believe it or not, is Vampire by Goblin. Which again may be unfair because it literally is just kind of a greatest hits album, a Goblin's greatest hits album almost. Or at least greatest hits of songs that aren't already included in, Suspiria or Deep Red or any of those. But if you're a fan of that type of music, if you're a fan of that style, it's definitely a must check out for sure. And yeah, Ed, you called it, which is so weird because when I saw that post earlier and you were playing the Vampire album, I was like, is there fucking cameras in my room or something? Because I've been listening to it while I was working on this list and working on this show. And then I saw you post it. I was just like, spoiler alert, dude. Jeez. What's going on? My Lunatique 22 made it late, but here. Hi. I like the Goblin tracks, but I do appreciate the library tracks. Many hit their marks, although some do feel a bit out of place. That's kind of how I feel. That's pretty much how I feel about it, like I said, there are just a few of them that are in there that are just, not my thing, not my cup of tea. But for the most part, I dig both. But good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Let's see. Steven says, all right, here's the true test. What does Steven say? I haven't read this yet. I haven't looked yet. So let me prepare my mind. Let me prepare my soul for this one, Steven. You cheeky bastard. You kept this hidden just for this show. I said there was hijinks afoot. I just didn't think you'd do it this late in the broadcast. Well, of course, I think you're completely insane. Have you listened to it, though? First of all, are you a fan of Goblin as a band? Are you a fan of that style of music? And second of all, have you actually listened to the album all the way through? And actually listened to the tracks that are in question here, sir? I'm not saying the movie is good. I like the use of the music in certain parts of the movie that I think work kind of well, but just as an album, as a standalone soundtrack, like I think it's the best. I really do. Stezio says, "Huh? Well, I guess I have to buy that. Guess I have a DVD to buy now. Thanks. Yeah, you can actually Vampire. I think you can buy it on a standalone DVD, but it's actually also included on the old Arrow DVD of Martin from over in the UK from some years back. I want to say like late 2000s when that came out, 2010, I think, maybe somewhere around there. But yeah, it actually includes Vampire on that as well. So you actually get two versions of Martin, I believe, and Vampire. It's a great collection on Arrow. You can find them on eBay every now and then. I have it over there, but no, won't grab it for this occasion. But I actually have it posted on my channel somewhere from a couple of years back, so you can check it out there as well if you want to spend no money on it. But yeah, it's worth a check out just for morbid curiosity, if nothing else. Steven says, however, you have the right, sir. Obviously not my choice, and you're obviously on someone's payroll to promote Martin Empire, but it's your list. Hey, the money I make between me and Richard Rubinstein is none of your business, sir. I'll listen to some cool music, like Elvis, baby. Hey, I put it on the list, man. Like, come on. Dark Half's on the list, specifically mostly for Elvis. So get a little credit there. Ryan Tripp says that's really fascinating that Martin had an Italian recut. Yeah, very few people really know about it. I bought a Vampire poster from Larry about a year ago now, and I would love to put it up, but it's one of those, it's like so goddamn big that you can't buy a frame for it, and really there's no room to put it anywhere, so I don't really know what to fucking do with it. But it's got the bat on the cover. It's it's the Vampire artwork. I'd love to put that up somewhere, but I have nowhere to put it. I wonder how many of George's films got that treatment. I still have to see the Argento cut of Dawn, to be honest. Oh, you've never seen the Argento? Yeah, definitely check out the Argento cut. And the Vampire cut, you can take it or leave it. Because I don't think you've actually seen Martin yet. I was gonna send you an email when you do finally get around to checking out Martin. Let me know, because I would love to have you come on and discuss it. Because I'd love to get your opinion on that, because I really feel like that's one. If you're a fan of, and we talked about it last week, I did a segment called "Make It a Double," where I did listed three films that would make a good double feature with Martin, and one that I almost put on there was Taxi Driver. I know you're a fan of Taxi Driver because it has a very similar narrative to it. I think when it comes to the Travis Bickle character and what Martin is, and then in Martin, I think you'd like it. So when you do finally get around to checking that out, man, let me know. I'd love to have you on to talk about it. But yeah, the Argento cut of Dawn is a trip too. Like when I first saw that, it was, like I said, it just felt so out of place because I was so used to the U.S. version of Dawn. But yeah. How many of George's films got that treatment? To my knowledge, the best of my knowledge, so Night's pretty much Night. There are a few different cuts of Season of the Witch, but that was not really in the same vein as what Argento did with Martin and Dawn. As far as I know, Martin and Dawn are the two that kind of have that similar treatment, where Argento took them and recut them for an audience and added a different soundtrack to it and made them almost completely different movies. But yeah, I think those are pretty much the only two that are like that in that way, at least. Steven says, honestly, I wasn't aware of this monstrosity. However, if I ever get the chance, I'll have to check it out. Check it out, man. I'm telling you, it's got some pretty killer fucking tracks on it. Which the album, the Roller album that Goblin did, is one that doesn't get talked about a lot because it's not a film soundtrack or anything, but it's one of their better albums in general. So yeah, it has a lot of music from that. So for me, it couldn't miss. But Steven says, Ryan Tripp's the Argento cut of Dawn is kind of a trip if you ever had the opportunity to check it out. The cast commentary, in my opinion, worth time. Yeah, that's true. On the which it's been on multiple versions now, but originally it was on the Anchor Bay box set, the Ultimate Edition back in the day. It has Galen, David, Scott, and Ken cast commentary over it, which is pretty funny because they're watching the Italian version, and some of them, I feel like some of them hadn't seen this version, so they're sitting there like, oh, here comes this scene where this happens, and then it's like it doesn't happen. It's like, oh, where'd that scene go? What are we watching? What is this? It's a great commentary. It's a hell of a lot of fun for sure. Excuse me. It's sort of like Ridley Scott with Legend, different cuts and scores in U.S. and Europe. Yeah, that was fairly commonplace for certain films back in the day. I think. I don't know if they still do it now as much, but definitely back in the day they had because I guess they felt like, you know, foreign and domestic audiences had different tastes, and what what would sell overseas isn't quite what would sell here, and vice versa. Like I said, no, Argento cut the Dawn of the Dead, did his cut of that because he didn't want all the satire and some of the comedic aspects of it, because he didn't feel like that would play as well in Italy, or not just Italy, but overseas in general. Especially which I guess makes sense because America kind of did that with Argento stuff. If you look at like Profondo Rosso, the U.S. cut of that, and it was the same with a lot of the U.S. cuts of a lot of the Italian stuff, did cut out a lot of the more dialogue heavy stuff that was included in the original cuts of those films. Like I think of Profondo Rosso specifically because the Italian cut, the original cut of that, is like 30 minutes longer than the US cut. And the US cut is basically, it just cut out a lot of the dialogue and interplay between, you know, the Daria Nicolodi character and the David Hemmings character in that. So for US audiences, they thought, oh, we need more of a horror movie, so we don't need all this back and forth between these two characters. Who needs all that? So it's kind of the same way overseas. It's like Argento was like, oh, we don't need all this joking around and shit. Let's get to the the gunfights and the flesh eating, by God. So yeah, I guess it kind of works both ways. And now that I'm thinking about it, it says, dude, I'm down. I'll reach out once I finally watch it. Sounds good, man. Let's do it. Because like I said, I'd love to get your take on it. It's one of my all-time favorites, but I get excited when somebody hasn't seen it for the first time, because some people, like I said, some people dig it, some people don't. It's one of George's most polarizing films, I think. So yeah, definitely hit me up, man. Ed says, I mean, Dario's cut worked. It turned a profit. Can't argue with that. That's true. It was a huge success. You can't argue with that. It says Orion watches Martin/Vampire and Alpha can watch Dead End Drive-In. That's on the list, man. That's on my list. I've seen. It's funny. Ever since you brought that up the other night, I've seen it pop up in different places. Did it just get a new physical media release somewhere? I think I saw somebody holding it. I want to say it was Garrett, Born to Be Rad. I want to say he posted a picture of him holding a new Blu-ray or 4K of it. But yeah, that one's one that's definitely on the list if I can ever get my hands on it. Like I said, I just now caught up with Rolling Thunder, guys, so bear with me here. I'll catch up. I'll get to it. But yeah, that's one that it keeps popping up here recently, so hopefully I can get on that soon. Are we freezing here? All right. Well, guys, this has been fun. And 3 hours, man. I was telling myself, I was like, maybe I can get this done in 2.5 hours tonight instead of 4.5 like I did when I did my top 10, the last top 10 I did. But real quick before we go, we got to loot that bank at least one time tonight. We got to loot it at least once. So let's go.
You never know.
Money, money, money. Right.
Zombie Historian, thank you so much, my man. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well, my man. $10 super chat from my boy Zombie Historian. Thanks for stopping in, man. Defending my dissertation on the history of the filmic zombie in March at Florida State. Wow, that's pretty cool, man. have to leave my bunker for it. As always, love your content. Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate that, and good luck with that. That sounds pretty fucking cool. Let me know how that goes. Nice. That's cool, man. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. Hope you have a good Christmas coming up. Like I said, we've got one more show next weekend. Next weekend we're going to be doing the annual now. I'm going to try to make it an annual thing around the holidays, around Christmas time. The annual Romero Film Trivia Night. Prizes and fun and all kinds of good stuff. So stay tuned for that. That'll be next weekend. If, God willing, I'm not in the hospital, holding a newborn baby. We'll be making that happen. So hopefully she can hang on for one more week. But, so yeah, that'll be next weekend. Romero Trivia Night. What else do I got coming up? After that, I'm not sure. We got what was that? One more weekend in December. We'll figure something out. Probably about time to do another roundtable, I think. If anybody's interested and wants to hop on a roundtable discussion, let me know. And then we'll be on to 2026, ringing in the new year. And like I mentioned earlier, life changes and all that good stuff coming up. So I don't know what 2026 holds for me or the channel going forward, but there'll always be something, because we got to have somewhere to talk about this shit. Where else am I going to sit here for 3 hours and talk about Romero Film Soundtracks and be told that I'm a fucking idiot from Steven? It's like, what would I do without that, So yeah, everybody give the video a thumbs up. I should do that like at the beginning of the video. I feel like by the end of it, 3 hours in, like most people are like, fuck it, I'm going to bed. But if you're still hanging in there and you haven't done it yet, be sure to give video a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new watching for the first time, and check out shop.ofromero.store. Put some new stuff up on there today, and I would say if you buy something now, you probably get it in time for Christmas. If you're buying something for that Romero fan in your life, for that Romero fan that you're trying to impress and embrace in a loving embrace for the holidays. That got weird all of a sudden. I don't know what that was, but thanks, guys. Ed saying, "Oh, you have a new box set from Australia's Umbrella." Okay, yeah, that's what it was then. That's what it was. I'll definitely get on checking that out, man. If I come across it, that's definitely on the list of shit to watch for sure. Jess, is another great show. Have a great week, Michael, and everyone in the chat. Thank you very much, man. Thank you as always. Always good to see you, and hope you're doing well, having a good week, and getting ready for Christmas coming up, because it's coming up fast. Let me tell you. Bonnie, good night. Have a good night. Always good to see you in here. Thank you very much, Ed. Good to see you. Steve says it's too funny. I saw almost everything that came out in theaters from the mid 70s to early 90s. I love hearing what y'all haven't seen. Well, yeah. We're youngins. I'm still in catch-up mode. That's the thing, man. There's so much out there to fucking see. Like, there's just not enough time in the day. Good night, Stezio. Have a good night, my man. Steven, it was fun as always, Alpha. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend despite your shady tactics on this subject. Don't let the furries bite you in the ass unless you dig that. Hey, you never know. You never know. I'm open. Furry curious. Is that a thing? Furry curious? I don't know. But always good to have you in here, man. Always good to hear from you, Steven. Have a good night as well, my man. You guys, I will see you guys next weekend for Romero Trivia Night. But until then, as always, you guys have a great rest of the night, a great rest of the week. And as always, stay scared.